are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Sirlana.
32 minutes, 21 seconds. 5-second tone followed by a 1-second pause.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Okay, gang, let's go.
From the space city called Houston, Texas, welcome to Spaceboy Universe, featuring Spaceboy and the lovely Sirlana. So strap in and prepare for launch sequence.
Greetings and salutations, I'm Spaceboy.
Oh, I'm Sirlana.
And this is Spaceboy Universe. As always, it is a great show tonight under difficult circumstances. Sirlana over there throwing me off, but here it goes. It is August 26, 2017, and tonight's guest is Kerry Cassidy. As always, you can follow us on Twitter. That's at the SB Universe. Follow the host at Sirlana, and follow me at Spaceboy Music. Follow the network, of course, that brings you all this fine content. That's at the SBU. That's SBU Network. Remember to hashtag your tweets tonight with hashtag space. I tell you what, Sirlana, what's going on over there?
What?
You said you can't hear yourself?
I thought maybe I wasn't on.
No, you're on.
Okay, it's just maybe the sound is so good.
So
I can't.
We're going to rewind it here. As always, follow us on the universe on Twitter. That's at the SB Universe. Follow the host. That's Sirlana. That's at Sirlana. And follow at Spaceboy Music for me. And follow the network that brings you all this fine content. That's at the SBU Network. Remember to hashtag your tweets tonight with hashtag SB Universe and hashtag Space Cadets. Want to hang out with said Space Cadets? Go to spaceboyuniverse.com, click on the dancing chat bubble, and that will get you in with all the cool kids. In addition to Twitter, you can find us on the universe on Spaceboy. You can find the universe on Facebook, Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, and so many more places. Speaking of YouTube, Sirlana, you can find more than the SBU of archive of shows. In fact, there is video content from SB Music, SBU video interviews, 2-Bit Gamers, and so much more. So go there and subscribe. Become a subscriber. You Space Cadets, you should know better. Catch a show live, and you can't, or want to catch a show live, but you can't, no problem. Just take SBU on the go with you via Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, because we love the broadcast. And on that magical note, Sirlana, I know we are live from the Bayou City.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about banter because the weather's taking care of all that.
Mm-hmm. It is a hot mess out there.
Oh my gosh, where do we even start?
Well, I know that we're covered with. I'm looking at the wall, and I think you retweeted the KHOU 11 news, and it shows a big old blop of red over our house, and definitely red is out there. It is crazy out there.
Yeah, I will be honest with you. I am deeply concerned.
It's like I'm not overly concerned at this point. I know there's a lot of rain coming down, and, after the show...
for the next 7 days.
Well, it was going to happen sooner or later. I mean, we've been pretty dry for the most part.
Yeah, that's the only thing we probably had going on our side is we've been really dry.
Well, let me make this point. We haven't been California dry.
No, I'm saying we went like 2 weeks without rain.
I mean, yeah, exactly. So that's a long time, but the humidity's been there.
It's summer in Texas. I mean, where's it going to go?
Yeah, in the immortal words of Rick Kasich, it's summer. But I know there's a concern, and I believe that once this ban passes, because that's how we're being hit, is one ban after another. But there's been breaks.
It's a spiral, so it'll hit us, it'll stop, and then another arm of the spiral come around and hit us, and because it's stalled and it's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of why I'm thinking our neighborhood's going to flood.
Well, the ditch is usually my bearing as far as telling where the water is, and I don't think it's quite up to the top. I mean, our neighbors across the street, they're flat. They don't really have the ditch like we do.
Mm-hmm. They have a French drain in their yard.
Yeah.
They don't have a ditch.
Yeah,
They're the only ones, though.
And we can't really, gauge it by Mr. A's across the street because his driveway always...
There's something wrong with his driveway.
Yeah.
It's not like graded properly.
No,
like there's
not.
a huge dip in it, so it
fills up. So,
yeah.
But for the most part, we've gone through a hurricane before.
Yeah, Ike was more wind with a showering rain that went for about 24 hours. And at that time, we didn't have any pets. That was the day before that happened, before Ike, is when I started having symptoms, anxiety, and that took me 4 years to get diagnosed. But yeah, so that's what I remember about Ike is the beginning of anxiety attacks.
And me, it was like I just went into this mode of, stuff happens and, you just deal with it. And I wasn't too overly concerned other than, concerned about you, of course. But, I was prepared to do whatever and wait it out. But I'm kind of glad we did go stay at your dad's while that went through.
That
because
happened.
Houston, for the most part, was without power for almost a week.
Yeah, we don't really have anywhere to run now unless we go back to my hometown and throw ourselves on some graces. Although we've got one Space Cadet fan, and of course my friend Holly, she would take us in, although I wouldn't want to impose on her.
And it's many things that you can prepare. I mean, we do have first aid stuff. We have some food here, so we have
But
things.
the important thing is
we have things to
have
get us through.
protection, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, I'm
We
sure
can fight hysterical
I'm
masses.
sure a lot of people out there realize that most Texans
Have protections.
have protection. It's just that kind of state, and so we definitely can make our stand, and it's important to be prepared one way or another. So that's all good. Very shortly we're going to have a special caller call in, and I have already called him, and so he'll be calling in, and he's got some news to tell the SBU audience. So very shortly. So when Serlana basically will, I could be talking.
I'm watching.
I might say something interesting, and she'll interrupt me when that person calls. So, but for the most part, we got to leave work at about the same time.
That shocked the bleep out of me when they let you go, because that's, you work out in the real world, and I work in fantasy land, which is higher education. But
it's very. I was like, okay, are they going to let us go early? Because I don't want to get. I can get to work, but then how can I get back home? That was what my main worry was. I wasn't going to have the ability.
Is, nothing started
right
till last night.
Well, they were saying that it was going to start around 1:00.
Some rain, but that was still just plain old rain.
Still, how many times have we? The one thing I hate about Houston,
they tend
is that when it could be somebody takes a swig out of a water bottle and it goes, and then everybody freaks out on the freeway, and
there's moisture
on
the road.
Yeah, so nobody knows how to drive, and that's what really trips me out.
Yeah, and we've had plenty of warning. We knew this was coming for at least 3 or 4 days before. So,
your sister is saying something about gas prices going up.
And
now,
here's where I interrupt you.
Okay. Are you there, caller? Let me turn up.
Yes, I am.
Hey.
This is Dave here. Hi.
Hey, David.
Hey, how you doing?
We're
Who's
pretty
this?
damp. This is Serlana, the co-host. I picked up the call.
Okay.
And you're live on the air.
Oh, okay, great.
What? Well, everybody, let me just say real quick. This is David Adair, friend of the show, and we're so happy to have you on.
Yeah, welcome from Hurricane Central.
And we know that you have some things to tell the audience, and what's going on, David?
Golly, I don't know where to start. There was a moment in time where I decided to come back to speaking, so I went back to a lot of my old clients, and some of my old clients were NECA, which is the National Rural Electric Co-op Association. There are 900 electric co-ops that make up the entire power grid in North America, the 48 states, if you didn't know that.
Yeah.
And about a third of them have been my clients. So I called them up and told them I have some different programs, because they really like my space shuttle programs, of all things. Space shuttles are going into electric co-ops out in the rural area, but really was successful. But anyway, I told them, I thought I had them on the phone. I asked them some questions. I said, "You guys know about SPWC, right?" And they go, "No, what is that?" I said, Space Prediction Weather Center. I said, "Yeah, what's it do?" It's got a network. It has 2 satellites out in orbit about 1 million miles from Earth, and they're called Stereo A and B, and they're designed to let us know when CMEs are coming in. Then they asked me, "What's a CME?" And I went, "Oh boy, coronal mass ejection. Are you familiar with that?" "No." And I thought, well, there's this big network they have, and it sends out an alert to everybody, and you'll get the alert. And they went, "No, we don't get any alerts." They didn't even know about the system. So I'll go back and ask the guy that runs the thing, Teo Stein. He was a really nice man, and he said, "Yeah, well, I run the satellites and I run the command center here at Boulder and Colorado." He said, "And I run the network, and when satellites tell us that a potential ship coming in, I send out the signal." But that's just it. He asked, "Well, how many of the co-ops are signed up on it?" And he said, "None." "Out of 900, you got none?" And he said, "Yeah, it's not his job. His job is to run the satellites, the command center." And Teo is like an oxymoron. He's an honest bureaucrat. So I went, "Oh man, this is not good." So I started checking into the grid, and then I found out. Then George Norrie was having it's been a pet peeve for him, and I started looking into the problem of the grid. And man, we have problems. The electric power grid is there, and I've been working on it from the CME side, coronal mass ejection. And if those of you who don't know what that is, put simple, it's a big ball of plasma. But, buddy, it's big and it's heavy. It weighs about 100 billion tons, and it's the same mass and weight of Mount Everest, which is 29,000 feet high. So it's like a bead of sweat that comes off the sun, and it's thrown out through the solar system by the solar winds. Well, that's what hit us in September of 1859, called the Carrington event. A British astronomer named Joseph Carrington, he saw the thing with the naked eye. He saw the flash coming out of the sun. And he set things up, and he was able to pretty much record and document a CME strike on planet Earth. And the only thing electronic back then was the Victorian Internet, the telegraph. And the telegraph, about all the wires caught on fire. The telegraph shacks, some of them burnt down. They had to stomp out little fires everywhere, and then they restrung the cables, and they were back in business. Now, fast forward to 2017. If a CME comes in today, where's your power grid? It's 40 feet in the air. And those lines that you see in your community, they carry about 5,500 volts. A CME, when it crashes in through the upper atmosphere, that plasma charge will come down, and it'll settle on our lines, and it'll put about 3.2 million volts down the wires. That's only designed for 5,500 volts. What do you think's going to happen, y'all?
Crispy critter.
Yeah, they're going to turn red hot, white hot, and disintegrate. And if that's not bad enough for you, you know, the transformers, they're filled with oil. They've always been filled with oil. It's how they dissipate the heat when they run the electricity through. But these transformers are used. They're used to 5,500 volts, not 3.2 million. So they explode like napalm. The oil catches on detonation, and so now you have how many transformers? Just look out your window.
Mm-hmm.
You got transformers everywhere. Imagine them things detonating. Well, they would detonate, and then the fires start. Well, call 911. You can't. There's no power grid. There's no power to the cell phone towers. Satellites, the uplink going to them are gone. So satellites won't help you. Cell phones won't help you. Landlines are gone. And then, call the police. You can't. And then the fires are raging. And don't have any way to pump water to the fire trucks when the fire trucks are out, if the trucks are even running, because they could have been knocked out by the force of the corona mass ejection. And there's a two-part bad news, a 1-2 punch this bad story. That's a CME. It comes from the sun, called a corona mass ejection. Well, the other one is called EMP. That's man-made, an electromagnetic pulse weapon. Basically, it's a nuclear warhead. About a really good one would be about 2.4 megaton, and it would detonate, anywhere from 100 to 300 miles above, let's say, the Mississippi River, and the pulse would come through the atmosphere, picking up the electrons. About the same effect on the power lines, and we're all in the dark in seconds. And the power would not be coming back, y'all, in a week or 2 weeks, not 6 months, not year, try a decade. Okay, now, follow this problem. Now you have 350 million people in America that have no water, no power, no food. The commodes don't flush either. So now you got septic tanks backed up. And it's what I said to Congress, that there's one thing that survives both the CME and the EMP and complete tackness. What's that? The 400 million handguns and all the ammo that goes with it. So now you got 350 million people, no food, no water, no power, no sanitation, and they all got handguns. What do you think's going to happen, y'all? It's called societal breakdown. And there are very large committees that have been studying this stuff, League of Concerned Scientists, the United Nations, AAAS, American Advancement Association of Science. I could go on and on all these groups that have done the studies of what would happen in a situation like this. And this is interesting. Some of these groups don't even like each other, but they all came to the same conclusions with the same percent numbers. When you got something like that happening where everybody ends up with the same answer, then you better stop what you're doing and pay attention, because that is the absolute fact. Fact is, 9 out of 10 people die. 93% of America dies in the first 12 months. Is that bad enough for you? So if that's not bad enough, it gets worse. Now America, the continent, is burning. Now, if it's just an EMP, it'll be just us knocked out. But if it's a CME from the sun, all the continents on Earth could be burning. So you'll throw up all this smoke and ash in the sky, and you'll lose the sun for 3 years. All vegetation dies, and all plant life, and then animals go. That's us. So we all die, y'all. So
sounds it sounds like a domino effect there.
It is. It's a cascading effect when it takes hold. And so anyway, I decided, we need to fix it. Well, we had a solution. 6 years ago, the task force created by Congress, called the Task Force on National and Homeland Security, and they were going to secure the grid. It's a Secure the Grid coalition. Well, they got the bill up, and they got the funding, they got everything they need. It's a 25-page act called the SHIELD Act, H.R. 2147, and is the number of the bill. Anyway, the chairperson, is this Republican senator from Alaska named Lisa Murkowski, and she killed the SHIELD Act twice. It's not even taxing you. The budget is already worked in on it. And she's killed it twice. And it just, when I found all this out, I was just dumbfounded, like, why are you stopping the SHIELD Act? Because she's angry with Trump, and everybody up there is like a kindergarten in the schoolyard fight, and so she's now adopted the never-Trumper attitude. So she will never let anything pass. She voted against the Health Care Act. She will vote anything that she can stop Trump from doing. Well, never mind, she's throwing us all under the bus and killing us all just so she can stop Trump. It's that kind of mindset that's going on out there in Washington. It's insane. And the coalition, the task force on the grid, can't get to the president. So here's why I'm talking to you tonight. On Tuesday, September 5th, I will be starting a food strike. I am a food striker of one person. I will be in a little tent up at Lafayette Park in the front yard of the White House. And I will not eat until I get a meeting with President Trump so I can hand him the letter from the task force so he knows what's going on. Is this not crazy or what? So the only bad thing for me is I'm a diabetic. I take 4 shots a day. I'm not going to fare well. If I have to go a couple of weeks waiting for a meeting, I could end up in Bethesda or morgue. So, but, you know, y'all are worth the effort. You really are.
Will you have somebody that'll be checking in on your well-being during that time?
Yeah, there's, like, the task force. There are thousands of people in it, and people know I'm going to be up there. You can come and visit. The park people told me I can have up to 3,000 visitors at one time.
Cool.
So if y'all want to come on, just go on up and party, man. But I'll be sitting outside my little tent, and I will not be eating until I get a meeting with Hippopotamus there. And I guess I'm just still doing my oath I took long ago, and I still run it. I had taken an oath to protect this country from threats, both domestic and foreign. Well, on the foreign side, here's another man, we got so many layers on this problem. Old fat boy down there in North Korea, he's assembling an EMP weapon. He's also rounding up his missiles. He should have everything assembled and ready to go by spring. He's getting ready to drop an EMP weapon on us. And we're sitting here doing nothing to protect our grid. And it's just like insanity. I can't believe nobody's doing anything. So I'm raising a ruckus. So everybody that hears my voice, I need for y'all to look up SHIELD Act. But here's something you really need to look up. Write this down. I'll give everybody a chance to get a pen and pencil. You will want to write this down. It's called a Call to Action for America. And you'll find it at securethegrid.com. So when you just type in the internet, a Call to Action for America, you'll see a list of items come up, and you pick the one that says a Call to Action for America, and then right off to the side of it, it says securethegrid.com. Click on that and read that thing, man. I'll tell you, if you don't do anything else, just read the first 2 pages. Well, 2 pages. Just read the first 2 pages. And I'm not trying to convince you. I want use that 3 pounds of gray matter in your skull called a brain. Read those first 2 pages of a Call to Action for America, and tell me if that's not a serious situation. So I do know what's in the letters to the president. Y'all want to know?
Oh yeah. We of course we do.
Okay. Well, here's what the Task Force on National and Homeland Security is asking the president. What they want is that, and it's so logical. You know how Trump is always saying we need to fix the infrastructure? Mm-hmm. Okay. What's the biggest part of our infrastructure? The most important part. You know, you got bridges and seaports, airports. The electric grid. List the electric grid as an infrastructure, and you repair it through that, if you want to. But here's what they really want. They want an executive order taken. There's a thing called the EMP Commission. They wanted a presidential executive order to move them to a presidential commission on critical infrastructure protection. If they get that, then they have teeth, and they can start putting the grid in. And another way to go for that is the federal government. Here's another great thing about moving the SHIELD Act into place as a national security item. The federal government will pay for all the costs from the National Security Program money, which, Lord God, you know how much they got. And that would greatly reduce the current resistance. But you know who don't want the SHIELD Act? The utility companies. The very people we're trying to shield, and they don't want it. It's because they think it's going to cost them, when actually, if they stop their fearing long enough to listen to what we have to say, it costs you nothing as a utility company. All costs are covered by national security. So how much is all this? Well, I think the total right now for a complete secure grid in the 48 states is $10 billion. $10 billion sound like a lot? Think about this. Department of Energy, it has a $30 billion annual budget. Every 12 months, $30 billion. I think it's $28.9 billion. What are they doing? How much money? So we take the $10 billion from just 1 year, one time, from DOE, and it pays for this entire grid. So it's you don't even have to work it into a budget to ask for additional funding. Anyway, Senator Murkowski has decided to kill that thing twice now. Now she's not just happy with the bill is dead on the floor twice, thanks to her. She now is moving for the EMP Commission to be disbanded.
That is just crazy.
I'm telling you, so I'm just going to get up on... You know, Americans don't go to car races to see who wins. They go to see who's going to crash and die. And that's we're a voyeur nation. You know, look at the reality shows. Well, I got one for you. How about watching a Navy veteran die on the steps of the White House trying to get a meeting with the president to save everybody's bacon? Isn't that crazy?
We have people in our chat right now, David, saying that they think this is a bit extreme, but they thank you for caring, and they think you're a real patriot, and they wish you the best.
I'm
concerned for your safety, too, but I know why you're doing it. I know why you're having to go to extreme to get attention.
And it's important to know... hold on.
We apologize. We're under several warnings here, because we're in Houston. That's a flash flood warning.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
It's a live show, everyone.
Water yet?
It's knocking on our door.
Yeah, we've got 7 days to get through. So
I was going to just add real quick, David, is that we also have talked to you about you feel like you've lived life, and so if it's time to go, you're not afraid to go into that gentle good night.
No, not at all. Are you kidding? People said, well, you might die from this. Yeah, I'd die. And my wife died a year and a half ago, Joanna. So I would tell them, yeah, I die. I wake up in the arms of Joanna. It's like, that's a bad deal. Bring it on. So I've had, there's some agency and stuff do threatening things, and that's my answer to them. And that really scares them. Now you got a person like, yeah, I'm looking to get out of here. But, no, I'm 63. I have no children, no family, no relatives. None. I'm just alone. So, and yet I'm willing to use what days I got left up here for y'all. I watch kids in malls and out in parks playing and stuff, and I'm just thinking, man, I don't want them to burn up. So if I can bring about a way to protect us all from that kind of a disaster of a CME or an EMP strike, it'd be worth my life. I don't want to see families burn up and all that stuff, starving to death, shooting each other. And believe me, that will happen. You lose all your power. It's not coming back on, maybe for years. You're basically burned back to the day 1877, the day before the light bulb. Mm-hmm. And that's where you'll be. And all your food, the refrigerator's gone. And what food's in the grocery stores runs out in less than 3 days. So it would be very fast and that is a reality. That's all real. It's not science fiction. It's not global warming. This is all hard science and real facts. Things already happened. It's
We've seen that too. We've seen that in just 2 days with just a hurricane, how things run out at the store. So it really doesn't take much for people to go, without. So
we only have about 96 hours of supplies on hand at any place in the United States at any time. So you think about that for a minute. Like you said, the hurricane hit there, and look how things ran out real fast. Imagine all the power gone in all 48 states. I mean, and that's not coming back on. Food will run out in 3 days. Yeah, you say, well, you're a prepper. Okay, fine, you're all prepped up. But, man, it's going to be murder and mayhem. You're going to have 350 million people, and about 90% of them are starving, so they're going to come after you. So it's just a nightmare you don't even want to even consider. But it's worth an effort to try to get this bill passed, and it will only take 24 months to put the grid in. Now, we're not talking years and decades. We can completely harden our grid in about 2 years. Now, we started this 6 years ago. We should have already been done 4 years ago, and not worry about the old fat boy or the son. But you know what? People and forces have dragged it on, killed it, and dragged it on until now. Here we are, and we just need to get this thing done. Now, you didn't think a CME would come along. Got your pencils out? Write this down. July 23rd, 2012. Just type that in your computer. July 23rd, 2012. A near miss is what you're looking for. On that day, not one, not two, but 3 CMEs in a row passed Earth only 110,000 miles away. That's less than half the distance to the moon. And they came from 93 million miles away, and they passed us within 110,000 miles. Each one of these is the size and mass of Mount Everest. It was the perfect storm. 3 times the power of the Carrington event. So if it would have hit, here's another scary mass thing. If we were 6 days earlier in orbit, all 3 CMEs would have hit us dead center. We would not be talking. We would all be dead. And that's a fact. It came that close. Why didn't it? You see all the stories. Nothing was printed in the news about it until 2 years later. They just didn't want to upset you. In other words, what could we do? However, guess what? Entire Congress was rushed over to Mount Weather. They didn't bother telling you that now, did they?
Go figure.
So, yeah. So, we almost died. The Mayans were right. They were 6 months off. We were supposed to die, December 21st, 2012? Well, those 3 CMEs, how odd, 6 months, about the right timetable, last of life would have perished by December 21st, 2012. Oh, by the way, that much fire and ash, when you lose the sun for 3 years, the temperature on the planet worldwide goes down to about 40 below zero. And we know that because we've taken core samples and seen that the planet has went through a phase like that. So it's almost like a nature's way of a high-speed ice age.
Wow.
Well, David, before we let you go, just remind everybody and important web addresses. Literate the.
If you go to my website, americasfallfromspace.com. If you go to that website and click up at the top, raise the shield, you'll see where you can print out letters, sign them, and mail them in to the appropriate people. And I've made it so easy for you. You only have to write just a couple of things and then print out the letter and fold it and put it in an envelope and mail it. And also there's a lot of information about things I've just been talking about on that website that you can print out. So, but do type in a call to action for America and read the first 2 pages. And it's all scientific fact. That's the scariest part. So anyway, pass the word to everybody. I'll be up in Washington, camped out on the front lawn up there on Tuesday, September 5th. The first night I'll be there, and I'll be there every day until somebody in the White House shows some life. And
will you
and
still
I can
be like being able to be contacted so we can see how you're doing, or are you just going to just concentrate on?
Well, no, I'll have. I've got a lot of radio stations calling
Okay.
in.
Good.
You can call my mobile number, and I'll set up a radio program with you. Lord have mercy, I got about 25 or 30 radio stations on. George Newry be calling me up as soon as I'm settled, so I'll be on coast to coast.
Well, that's good. The more people that know, the better.
Yeah, it is. Y'all need to know this, man. This is one time that phrase is such a cliche anymore, especially in your communities. Need to know, but you do need to know this stuff because this will kill you and your family and everything. So, and it's not science fiction; it's science fact, and nobody's even talking about it. It's not very. And the strangest thing about the bill, the act, it's a bipartisan. Both parties voted for it. Can you imagine that? The way they carry on up there, but they voted for this, and nobody even said a word about it. I just don't understand how the media works today.
That's crazy.
But I thought if I give them a reality show of somebody naked and afraid, if I had to get naked on the front house lawn, I would if it helped.
That would get people's attention, I think.
Well, I would do anything to get attention for this because the alternative is death. Yeah, I don't know how much more dramatic you want to get than that, but I thought naked and afraid in a tent on a front house lawn. That'd be a program.
Yeah, you'd get some attention that way. But hey, David, I want to just say that it's been a really great pleasure to listen to you over the Art Bell years, and I've enjoyed those stories, and they've meant a lot to me. And I can't tell you how much you mean to me now. To actually get a chance to speak to you, it's been quite a pleasure and an honor, and I just wanted to let you know that.
I'm glad I'm by myself in my office here. I feel my face red. So.
Don't think anything of it. It's like when I had the conversation
don't fanboy on him so hard.
when I had the conversation with you yesterday or Thursday, and it was like, hey, you recognize, you know who I am? Of course, it's the accent, and I feel a certain kinship. We've talked to many people that have that same accent. So when I hear you, I think of relatives and people at home.
You married a woman from Louisiana.
Yeah.
You can't help it.
Yeah, so it's nice to hear
and
you.
And as you know, I approach English as a second language, and because I'm from the South, and I come from the land where y'all is singular and all y'all is plural.
Yeah, same here. I don't understand.
Anyway, northern people go, what'd you say?
Well, they say use guys or something like that, and I'm like, but y'all is better.
Y'all. There's women in that crowd. They're not guys. So it's y'all. Or you want everybody. It's all y'all.
Right.
So true.
Well, David, we appreciate you coming to the universe tonight, and we're going to keep an eye on you, and let's hope that you shake some trees up there in Washington.
Yeah, I tell you, I intend to do just that and see how many nuts fall out. There's be a bunch up there.
Awesome.
So, well, y'all stay dry, and I hope the rain stops for you in the hurricane.
Well, we hope so
we
too.
hope so too, but we got 7 days of rain to get through.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, you're important salt. When it rains, it pours.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Well, that's. I also want, for everybody to use their social media and start talking about this stuff. And it's all on the internet. You read it all. And like I said, I don't have to try to persuade you. I just want to point you in a direction. Just let you read. Believe me, once you read the first 2 pages of A Call to Action for America, I won't need to say another word. Actually, you're going to be really pissed off. Which actually wouldn't be a bad place for y'all to be right now, because that will get things done. Well, we need to get this done so bad. And like I said, I'm on my way out, but I don't want to see the other younger generations. I like to see them grow up. But I tell you, y'all are not going to make it if you don't get this SHIELD Act passed and get your grid hardened up for both CMPs and CMEs. Either Mother Nature or man's going to take you out. We've always known that, but at least we can prevent this one. Can't stop a bunch of other stuff, but I'm telling you, in the science department, this technology is 50 years old. We know it works. Been using it for 5 decades in the military. We're just now going to put it on the civilian grid so it'll protect you guys. So.
Okay. Oh, I found what you're talking about. I found a PDF, a call to action for America, and I've been tweeting it out to the different to different links here so people can get to it.
Yeah, everybody pass it on to everybody else, and it'll be one of the best favors you could ever do for somebody, is to let them read up on that. If nothing else, it's a good guideline of what you expect is going to go bad, and then maybe you can do some things to safeguard yourself. In the meantime, I'll try to do the big picture and get the Grid Act passed and get the grid in place. I even offered to put the grid in. I would work for free, and I'm more than qualified. I can get the grid put in place. So I'd be glad to do that. We'll work for food. We'll work for food to put in the grid. So there you go.
Sounds good. Well, David, I hope you have a pleasant evening, and if things work out and you go beyond September 5th, we'd love to have you back and talk whatever you want to talk about. Yeah.
Well, if I don't make it, I do have counter plans. I'll end up in Bethesda, and if I'm in a coma, if I don't make it, at least you guys know what happened.
We'll take the baton and continue the race for you, sir.
Absolutely, because, man, you guys are worth the effort, you know. Yeah, if the entire American public save them, yeah, it's a bargain. For trade of life for that. Absolutely. So anyway, yeah, your friends on chat, they're right. This is drastic. Drastic situation requires drastic action.
Yep.
So here we are, following the logic of Carl Sagan. Anyway, I just hope somebody will listen, and but do pass it on. And you know something else you can do? You can contact the, if you really want to help me, I can't toot my own horn in some areas, especially press.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody call the White House press secretary's office and let them know there's a Navy veteran sitting out there on their front lawn. He's going to die if you don't have a meeting with the president. It's going to be embarrassing. So call them up and let them know, because I can't do it, so somebody will have to do it for me. There's something for y'all to do.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a big help. So just tell them look for the guy out in a tent.
Hopefully you're not buck naked out there.
No. Well, that was an idea. After I said it, I thought, that'd get some attention. No, I wouldn't do that to people. People saw me naked. It'd take years of therapy to get you straightened out.
All right, David.
Now will have me on.
We like I said, anytime you want to call the universe or tell us something new, you have an open door to talk to us anytime.
Well, I tell you what, after September 5th, plan on just give me a call. I'll be out there on the lawn. I'll talk to you.
Well, we might
we'll
take
do that.
Yeah.
Nothing else, just to make sure you're okay.
Exactly.
Right. I'll give you my mobile number.
Okay.
Awesome.
If we don't float away, we'll do that.
Yeah, that's a little bit more pressing need than mine right now.
Yeah, true.
So, get a rubber raft. They work well.
Yeah, or an airbed.
Yeah, an airbed. There you go. Now, somebody's been thinking.
Well, I saw a guy floating on a queen-size airbed with like an oar. He was like spread eagle on it, like he was having the time of his life, floating down floodwaters. So, yeah.
Well, you know what? That's how you approach a disaster. Just make a resort out of it. You know, hard to put somebody down when they're laughing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate y'all having me on, and look forward to talking to you again.
Okay, good.
Will do, sir.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. I want to tell everybody that you can contact the White House via email or phone number. It's whitehouse.gov, and there on that page you can contact. It says call the president with comments, and that number is 202-456-1111. The switchboard is 202-456-1414. And like I said, you can also email them via the web address. They also take snail mail, and that's the White House. And if you didn't know, it's 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest, Washington, D.C., 20500. Sorry about that frog in my throat. So, Solana, we have maybe a few more minutes we can go over. I was actually reviewing the last time we had David Adair on our show. It was number 051 was the show number. And and you ready for this? It was August 27th, 2016.
Wow.
So almost exactly a year ago.
That sends a chill down your spine, doesn't it?
I love how, these subject matters kind of rotate in and out of our schedule. And, the funny thing is, let me back up, is there I was at work, doing my IT thing. And all of a sudden, I see David Adair pop up on my caller ID. I'm like,
because you talked to him last year.
Yeah, I had him programmed in my phone, and but still, I was in shock because it's like, normally I get calls through the day and I deny them or send them to voicemail because I'm at work, trying to do my thing there, and so when he called, it's like, I answered it immediately and walked out of the office and started talking to him, and it was great to talk to him. It was like hearing family. I haven't heard in a while, but the reality is we just recently, not too long ago, talked to him on the Quantum Hologram Matrix.
Yeah.
Did you know that's a show?
Eric had got a hold of him.
Do you know that's a show on the SBU network?
And it will be back with John this coming Wednesday.
And let me tell you, he is tickled pink to be coming back. And also, he has been just enjoying living it up in Arizona.
He has found himself in Arizona.
I told him that he was going to have a good time, making this transition from living out in Florida to going to Arizona, because he's with like-minded people now. So, and when you're with like-minded people, you can express yourself and talk and the lingo.
That's like.
I don't know.
Outside of you.
I'm usually with you, but I sometimes think that you don't think of me as like-minded. It's like, oh God, there he goes watching zombie movies again. But zombie movies, zombie shows are in between thing right now. Let's see, I binge watched The Tick today. Enjoyed it. I watched Death Note, which is a Japanese anime that
I saw a trailer for that one. That's freaky.
It was good.
Freaky looking.
I enjoyed it immensely.
I don't want to see that.
I'm trying to think of what else I saw today. You
watched The Tick.
Yeah, The Tick. Yeah, I was binge watching that before we got in here. There was only 6 episodes, but there's supposed to be 4 more that hasn't been released yet on Amazon.com.
I saw you watching it. I didn't really care about it.
You were talking to your brother, and
who actually called me because he was concerned. Can you believe it?
I had to really? You talked to your brother?
Yeah, I know. It's some extreme. To take something extreme.
I'm not trying to play it down or anything. It was nice for him to call you.
It's like, hey, are you dead? No? Okay. I'll tell you if I'm dead.
But, binge watching TV. I got to watch Defenders a couple of days ago. I binge watched that. You were making fun of me saying that I can't watch just one. I have to plow through the whole whatever I'm watching. I'm excited but saddened that this is the last season of *Halt and Catch Fire*. Got to see 2 episodes of that, and that was interesting to watch. this is, I wanted to go back with what your sister said about gas. And, on that day, I guess it was Friday. Yeah, Friday.
Yeah.
So, you send me the usual text message if something comes up and interesting.
Yeah, well, see, I get up before you, so I get out of here before you. And I said, look, you had told me you needed gas. I said, look, if you need gas, don't even leave our neighborhood. Try to find some gas, because we've got 4 gas stations right in our neighborhood. And I said, because if you try to go to 10 or outside of 10, the gas is already gone.
Right.
It was already gone before the storm even hit Friday morning at 5 a.m.
I didn't go to my normal gas station, which I like to go to because it has my favorite Gatorade thing that I like to drink.
That's what I told you.
So I ended up going to the store right next to us, just down, a street over, and went in there, and there was no gas. Then I went down the street to the next one. Usually it's a mobile, and
cash only.
It does have the cards now. Now that it's mobile, since mobile bought them out.
Oh, okay.
So, and went to start to gas that, no gas. So I went to another gas station and got lucky and filled up the tank on my car. So I managed to get gas, and but I was concerned there because when I pulled up to the Shell, where I ultimately gassed up, that there were I wasn't long lines, but every gas thing was taken up. Yeah, every pump was taken.
Both of our vehicles are filled, just just in case,
And it's not like we went anywhere since then. I mean, we went around the corner to a burger place and got some burgers, but since then we haven't really left here.
Yeah, and we managed to go to Walmart Friday as
oh yeah.
You got out at 1, I got out at 1, and we met at a
Walmart on
a
10.
Walmart that we don't normally go to, but we got some things to get through the weekend, maybe till like Tuesday. Fortunately, we didn't need any of the life-giving supplies. I mean, other than toilet paper, which they still had. So, mostly needed cat food, cat litter, and cat treats.
And tea.
There was plenty of those things, and got us a couple of frozen options, and so we'll be okay.
So we're okay. I mean, it's not like me personally, I'm gonna starve or anything.
We're not gonna starve. We've got because we get Ozarka deliveries, like the big gallon size things.
5 gallons.
Yeah. So we have plenty of water. We've got water for drinking, water for bathing, and for running toilets. So. We're good for that. It's just if the house floods, I don't know I just feel like I don't know.
Well, I don't think we're going to flood, and because our house is. I mean, how many years have we lived here?
Did it quit just now?
I mean, we're between. No, I don't hear the train ride that was going out there earlier. But
hang on, I'm looking at the.
The thing is, we've been in this house for how long?
Day after my birthday, 2008.
So at 8.
We closed on the day before my birthday. Day before.
So we've been here for about almost 9 to 10 years, and in that time we've gone through Ike, and we've had some rain situations, but where we're sitting is pretty much higher ground compared to the rest of the neighborhood.
Slightly, yeah.
Yeah. So.
We're going to get slammed all the way to 4 a.m. Mm-hmm. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, there was a warning until 2, and now I guess there was a new warning that, you've seen the weather report.
The tornado warnings keep going on and off. And we don't know where they're talking about.
Well, no, Cy-Fair was just down the road.
Up
there. I mean, those were tornadoes, and we were getting the notices that the tornadoes in our area. So.
That's nice and vague, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, considering that before they couldn't tell you where a tornado was going to touch down many years ago, and now there's technology to say, hey, there is a tornado touching down close to where you live. Seek shelter now. I mean, you got to give it up for that as far as technology is concerned. What, did I just blow your mind?
I don't know. They say the worst is not over. It's just not over yet because the dumb thing is stalled out over Texas.
Well, that's because there's a high pressure area north of the hurricane, so it's kind of stalled out there and just kind of spinning like one of those tops. And it's going to continue to suck moisture off the Gulf of Mexico, bringing more rain to the Houston area and, even into Louisiana. We've seen some of the weather reports and the satellite scans of Louisiana, and they're getting pretty much swamped. Pardon the expression.
Yeah, the coastal towns. There is one fatality recorded. And I'm not sure what the circumstance was for that fatality. I think it was a male, but Rockport, Texas, which is a port town, just devastated. I think Corpus Christi took a bloody nose, so to speak, but I don't think it was as bad as they thought it was going to be. So
no, I think they got hit, but it went through. But the rest of Texas is
Matagorda
is going to experience. I mean, either side of the. Well, I tell you what.
Port Onassis, yeah.
The side of the hurricane that usually you have to be concerned about is the side that's on the right of the hurricane, and that's where we're at.
The dirty side.
That's because it's sucking all the moisture in to the hurricane itself to fuel it, and that's where you're getting all this precipitation hitting Houston, and that's where we always seem to get the worst when it comes to hurricanes, when it's hurricanes like this. Now,
I just heard thunder.
Yeah. Now, I'm trying to remember which thing was a tropical depression that hit, and it'll come to me later, but hit Houston, and it went north of Houston, but then came back and just really dumped a whole bunch of rain. So, it's inevitability, just like earthquakes in California. You've got your hurricanes here and on the Gulf, and you've got tornadoes down Tornado Alley. I can't even say it.
My brother, when he called me, he says they're starting to have. Well, they don't call them hurricanes on the other side of the world; they're typhoons. But they lived in Malaysia.
Right.
My sister-in-law's from there. But when they, so in the whole history of that area, they've never seen a tornado, which they call a cyclone. And they had one, and they had no idea what to do, how to act. And
Catalina, anytime, where do you go when a tornado is coming? Anywhere
bathtub,
but the tornado. Bathtub is usually the place to dive into, and I've seen many
or any inner
things.
Hallway that's got stronger walls. This house being so old, I think it's just going to go.
What our house has going for us is that the way
I don't care about it.
Well, the way they're lined up, because we got the reservoir, and it has a very high lip, so it's high.
There's a reservoir. It's a levee behind us. There's a big levee.
Big levee, and then you've got
Sorry, I keep hitting my mic.
I guess if you could think of behind the street, there's the power lines that have this big area where it allows wind to blow through. So we're getting wind deflected to other places, and that's why I think we've never had an issue with.
No, wind has not been an issue with this storm. It's just the unrelenting water. It just will not stop.
It accumulates.
Yeah, and it just pools and it'll flood. So I wonder what other parts of this street that we're on, like they're more toward I-10
look
or
like.
Yeah, the ones that haven't been converted over to city drainage. We are in the process of this neighborhood we live in. It's all ditches. We all have ditches. So they are under construction where they're lowering the street and they're putting in city storm drains, like normal. But they haven't made it to us yet.
Quick, Gene, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
But there's no such thing as flood insurance. It doesn't exist.
But, we have insurance that's good. Everything else but rain.
Well, if
flooding
could cause a fire somehow.
Oh my God!
That we're covered for.
I really hate. I'm going to admit this over the air like this, but Sirlana doesn't like this house anymore, and
I would,
constantly have to remind her about living in an apartment.
yeah,
Basketball,
but see,
basketball.
a condo would be different because it's a standalone structure.
You've seen the condos. You don't even want to live in that.
Well, not the $500,000 ones, no. But apartment. We're both miserable. We live in a house. I'm miserable. It's just you got to care for all the problems and all the expense of it, and it's just a freaking money pit. So
anyway, so let's move on. I know that people are waiting for our interview that we did with Kerry Cassidy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about it because we were working hard to get her on the air, and but we had to do a pre-interview with her, or I guess an after-hours interview, and so it's pre-recorded, but we'll be live in the chat room talking to all the space cadets there. And, we hope that you enjoy it. And then, of course, when we come back, it's about an hour long.
We'll open up the phone lines if you want to talk to us about what you heard with David or Kerry, or you just want to know what's going on with us and the weather,
Yeah, we'll.
But I'll wait till after
your good wishes.
the interview.
So, as always. And then, okay, so we're going to take the musical break like we usually do. And I have a treat. It's a new piece of music I'm working on for the next album. And I don't have a name for it. Or Sirlana was thinking of a name.
Yeah, I got a name. And if you don't like that, I have 2 words you can add to it.
Oh, well, I hope it's not with the initials F and U.
No, good Lord. No, I would never suggest that.
I know you wouldn't do that.
No, I wouldn't do that.
You're listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network, and we'll be right back after this.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Sirlana.
Kerry Cassidy is the CEO and founder of Project Camelot. Kerry is a documentary filmmaker, investigative journalist, and well-known radio talk show host of Project Camelot Whistleblower Radio and Project Camelot TV with broadcaster with a weekly live show on YouTube. Her website, Project Camelot, at projectcamelot.org or projectcamelotportal.com, is a leader in the alternative media sector with a YouTube channel that has over 52 million viewers worldwide and 165,000 subscribers. Kerry travels the world conducting interviews and documenting testimony of whistleblowers with above top secret clearances, as well as authors, researchers, and experiencers covering conspiracies, the secret space program, black projects, ETs, Kundalini, and ascension and free energy. She speaks at conferences around the world and is considered one of the leaders of the disclosure movement. It's now important more than ever now that we have people like you, Kerry, and I'm not trying to say this to blow smoke up your, skirt. But in light of losing Jim Mars, somebody that has a wealth of information and probably contacts and people who he probably knew that he couldn't say that, were, his sources. It's more important now that we have people like you who stay on top of things to get whistleblowers and try to get the truth out there. So it's more important now than ever that we band together and make sure everybody knows that, Kerry Cassidy and Project Camelot is out there and they're fighting the good fight.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's how I see it as well. So thank you for that.
I guess, Jim, wasn't he one of the, original witnesses
yes,
to Project Camelot?
That's correct. One of the original, what we call whistleblowers. I think Jim knew a lot more than he ever revealed. So he was a remote viewer, and my understanding he's quite skilled at that. I have to tell you, I know this is going to sound a little spaced out, but, this is Camelot, so
sure.
Whatever. Right after he died, I did get a visitation. Just very briefly, he seemed to look in on me, and he was looking very happy. And I didn't expect it, and I just have a sort of psychic ability to tell when somebody's viewing me or looking at me or kind of coming in through the ether, so to speak. And I was sort of in a quasi-wake, in between waking and sleeping state. I'm not sure exactly, how that was, but I saw him, and he was stopping by to visit me right after he died. So that was actually very nice, and I had written an article or put an article about his passing on my front page. So, it obviously people don't really die. It's just they transition into another reality, and so I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, it's very kind. I got to meet Jim at Contact in the Desert twice, and he was one of my favorites. In fact, the first book I got from him was Alien Agenda, and enjoyed it immensely, and just got tapped into him, and he'll be sorely missed. And but that was great to hear that your visitation from him, and to know, I guess, to have some comfort to know that he's doing okay. So that is good to hear.
Yeah, taking it for what it's worth. Mm-hmm. Everyone has their own kind of take on these kinds of things, but all I can say is I wasn't expecting it, and his image just popped up, and he seemed to be looking at me. He was, coming through the ether. So, assuming he didn't just get abducted to Mars, I do think he, which would be preferable, obviously. But at any rate, I think he's in a good place. So that's very lovely.
Good. Now, you mentioned having a connection there. You have gifts yourself that I'd like you to talk a little bit about them. I guess what was...
When did you know you had these, you say you're an intuitive, and did you have to go through some training to do the remote viewing?
Well, I was sort of a very aware kid. So it started when I was very young, and I had a lot of abilities. I was very aware of there being sort of an unseen world, I guess is the best way to put it. and I eventually had, I believe now, of course I didn't see it that way at the time, but I used to have a recurring nightmare of like an abduction scenario when I was around, I think I was around 12 years old, maybe 11 and 12. And eventually it stopped, but it had the markings of what I consider to be a My Lab type of abduction. In other words, there was a human, he had a top coat and a hat on, and I would go out through a gate or approach the gate. I would hear a large buzzing sound, and then, everything would go black. But I was terrified, and this is when I was a kid. Years later, getting into Camelot, I've heard so many abduction stories and have also done a lot of research around that. And so I believe that was at least one kind of thing that was going on. The other is that I did have an awareness of, prior lives at a relatively young age. And I also did a little bit of channeling. I don't usually talk about it, but when I was quite young, right in college with a girlfriend, and I started channeling, I decided to cut it off because I really didn't like it. I didn't like the way my girlfriend started to behave in a very kind of strange way towards me as a result of me getting, like you might say, kind of downloaded, channeled information. And so I stopped that. But I think actually, to be honest with you, I've always been in contact with, and it's my belief that everyone is. I just think some people are aware of it and others are not. And I feel the same way about psychic abilities. We all have it. Some of us develop it more than others. Some of it shut it down, maybe even when they're a kid because of something their parents say or something, their church or whatever it happens to be. I grew up in I think you call it a non-denominational type family. When I was around 12, I used to go around to various churches with my mother, she had 4 kids, and she decided she wanted to bring sort of religion, spirituality into our family, and didn't know how to do it. So she brought me around I went to Buddhist temples and all kinds of places. And that sort of phase didn't last very long in our family. But I did get exposed to what was called the Unitarian Church. And the only thing, we went a couple times, and the only thing I remember was very striking to me is that I learned about Akhenaten and Nefertiti, and I related very strongly at that time to them and to that concept of what was going on in Egypt at that time. And I've since gone to Egypt. I've had past life recall and some very sort of stunning experiences associated with that since then, many years later, and so on. So I actually am writing a book, and I'm putting these kinds of stories into the book because, it's not something I obviously am an investigative journalist, documentary filmmaker. I am not the subject of my interviews generally. And so, this is just an opportunity for me to sort of branch out and tell people more about myself, I guess you might say.
Well, that's great. That you, like I said, that you've taken the time to let us know a little bit about yourself, and because, we've watched you and your journalism, and was that something that, going back to you when you were younger, that you were trying to aspire to be in journalism, or was it at that time you were just kind of going where the journey was taking you?
I had sort of a strange trajectory because I moved to New York City kind of based on intuition, and I planned to go to film school initially. I was accepted at NYU Graduate School of Film and Television, and I went across the country, but I didn't know how I was going to pay for that. So we didn't have any extra money in my family. I think by that time my father had already passed on. So I was just sort of winging it. So I applied to the program and then had no money to pay for it. And so what I did instead was I started studying acting and directing with a teacher in Carnegie Hall who studied with Sanford Meisner. and his name was Robert X. Modica. So I would study at night, and basically I also started meditating during the day full time whenever I could. And I was living in a loft of my friends. I didn't have to pay rent. This went on for a few months, and I was able to have a lot of free time to concentrate. And I decided to, I know this sounds kind of crazy also, but I decided I wanted to reach enlightenment. And I had read Siddhartha as a young person. I didn't want to follow any gurus. I had a very strong sort of inner knowing, and I basically decided not to follow anyone else. So I learned the techniques and would basically did that. And then I did have a total, what you call a Kundalini activation, awakening. All my chakras joined up, and I did have some incredible samadhi experiences. And all of that propelled me to be able to see the world differently. I also had some exposure to the Montauk Project at that time. Again, all this goes into my book. And so I know this is kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but strangely enough, I did study journalism in college. I actually, I was very interested in it. I don't know that whether I actually planned to be a journalist, because I actually planned to be a filmmaker. So little did I know that both paths would prepare me for what I do now. But so I did study, as I say. I wrote for college newspapers. I was kind of radical even at that time, because I refused to be told what to do as a journalist. So I think early on they wanted to fire me. They I stayed on the paper for a while, and they kind of tolerated my style of journalism. Mm-hmm. And I actually interviewed Maya Angelou. I don't know if you know who she is.
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
I was, this is many years ago. I'm dating myself, but also I got into, I heard Bobby Seale speak, and was very impressed by him. And I was interested in what was going on with Angela Davis and all of that, wrote articles about that, feminism, socialism. I studied all of the isms, you might call it, in college. And I was doing very, very well in graduate school, in college as well. This is all at Sonoma State University in Northern California. So that was all prior to getting accepted at the NYU Graduate School of Film and Television, which, as I say, I actually attended a few classes in the beginning and then realized I couldn't fund myself. So as I said, I made that transition. But so I know that's long-winded, but in essence, that's how I got into journalism. I did learn, sort of the how, what, when, where, and why principles. And so I'm a little more schooled, I guess, than your normal UFO researcher who kind of ends up writing articles and things.
Sure. I guess now that you're, I would say you're more independent. I guess it makes you feel good in the sense that you can control the destination of the information that you go out and seek and present it to the masses. So I guess there's that freedom that you have now that you've built up that level. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, I strangely right now I'm actually trying to go back to packaging. I got into Hollywood. I worked for Hollywood for 19 years before I ever got into Project Camelot. And that story, I've told many times on radio shows, but nonetheless, so I was preparing. It seems I was preparing for this very strange transition, but I had a background in the movie business. And right before I got into Camelot, I was trying to package what are in essence sci-fi, because of what I wanted to do. And I was writing screenplays. I wrote 4 or 5 of them, tried to shop them around Hollywood. And I also got clients and started to do basically develop motion pictures and try to sell them. So I pitched projects to the development people of people like Ridley Scott and James Cameron and even Kathleen Kennedy and so on. So I was deep in Hollywood, but I was fairly unknown. And I worked as an executive assistant at the major studios, at Sony Studios, and for top, executive officers and all of this type of thing. I became a reader in Hollywood for a while for various agencies, ICM, CAA, all the people that know the business are going to know these names. And I also worked for HBO for a time in their premiere film division. So I had a real strong background in Hollywood, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make motion pictures because I early on decided that the best way to get the truth out is through fiction. And I still feel that way, actually. Mm-hmm. But my life took a strange turn when I got into Camelot, when I picked up a consumer-grade camcorder and decided to go to UFO conferences and start interviewing the speakers. And what I first did is I decided to make a UFO documentary. And so I took a camera to these events and decided to ask point blank whether the person had seen a UFO. So I asked people like Rich Dolan and Stephen Bassett and Jim Mars. These were my first people that I ever approached with a camera. And there is a short documentary on Project Camelot. It's a documentary short that has their response. And I don't know, it worked out really well right out the bat. So I decided to continue that. And that's how I met my former partner in Project Camelot, Bill Ryan. He was a person that I asked if I could do an interview with him because he was representing on the web anyway, this Project Serpo. Mm-hmm. And he was basically a volunteer who had been interested in the sector, and we connected over what was called Victor's News Group, which had a lot of intelligence agents and journalists and various people on it. We both got invited to join it as well. I'm not sure the machinations of how that even happened. But nonetheless, I got in touch with him. He was a webmaster who had decided to help correlate put together all of the Serpo information that Victor had come up with from these disclosures from Anonymous. And Victor only used what's called web TV. He didn't have an organizational sort of basis, and he didn't know the internet very well. And Bill was very good in that regard. So he volunteered. And that's how he got involved in the Serpo project. And that's how we met, because when he was doing that, I was going to go to this conference, which was the UFO conference that was yearly in, I think it was February at that time in Vegas. Mm-hmm. And I decided to ask Bill for an interview because when dealing with Project Serpo, there was no spokesperson that would come out in person and say, I was involved and it's about this, that, and the other. So Bill, as the webmaster, became the only spokesperson for the project. So I was actually not interested in interviewing him because he was a webmaster in my mind. You know, I thought, what can he know, right?
Exactly.
But he was becoming kind of the flavor of the month, and he was invited to speak at this conference that I had planned to go to. And so in December, I wrote to him about the February conference, inviting him for an interview. And that's how we met.
I read that, I don't know if it's still on the internet today, but it was some years back. I actually read the Project Serpo account, if you will, if that's what it is, about them getting on the alien vehicle and arriving on that planet. It was really interesting.
The story itself is fascinating.
Whether it's true or not, it's fascinating.
What I thought was kind of interesting, how it kind of parallels the beginning of Close Encounters. When Richard Dreyfuss goes and
that's exactly what it did. It took off from the moment when you see Richard Dreyfuss get in line in the movie Close Encounters to go be part of an alien-human exchange program. And apparently, according to what we found out later, there were about 6 of these programs back in the early days, in around the 60s, from what I understand. Serpo was one of them, at least according to the information we finally figured out. I can say that there's a lot of disinfo in there, and it was what's called a DIA, a release of information. The people associated with it behind the scenes were Defense Intelligence Agency, and the infamous Rick Doty was also involved in that as well. So yeah, it has some very questionable things involved with it, but it was an attempt at what actually is happening now as well, which is a sort of what I call a soft disclosure.
Mm-hmm. I usually take a lot of that, and I usually use the idea of putting it into a crucible and kind of just boiling it down to, the essence. Overall, it's a very fascinating story, but I think that's probably when we see so many stories out there, it's like, what can we take for 100%? What can we not take for 100%? Where can we find a middle ground? What are your thoughts on some of that?
I guess, first of all, you have to feel what resonates. This whole adventure that we're going through here on planet Earth is a spiritual story. At the very root of it. And so it's all about developing your sort of activating what I call your Kundalini. In the West, it's called Orgone, through meditation and other means. And basically, reaching enlightenment ultimately is the real goal. But part of that path involves finding out what's true and what's not. And also understanding what reality really is and all of that. So the Earth is going through this, and humans are going through this. And so what resonates, which is a combination of the heart and the mind, as opposed to just what's intellectually sounds true, this is what we're really looking for. And it's a vibrational thing. Truth has a vibration. And so that's the best way, in my view, to determine. Now, some people like to use things like NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, kind of getting their body to tell them what's resonating. When I'm saying resonates with regard to the heart and mind, it actually goes beyond what your body can tell you, because the problem with NLP, in my view, is that it relies a bit too heavily on the body. And the body is programmed like we are, through all of the means that they use to program you. And, of course, if you've seen the movie The Matrix, you kind of know what I'm talking about. So It has to be deprogrammed. And a lot of people also have implants of various kinds. And, of course, with the chemtrails, we've got a lot of nano coming in. So there's a lot of impurities, basically, having gone into the body. So that system, if you will, is not necessarily completely reliable, which isn't to say that you shouldn't listen to your body, because obviously you should. But anyway, so I'm talking about what is truth and how do you determine it. So there are other ways as well. One is the way that the CIA has, I guess, made famous, which has to do with triangulation. And we use that in Camelot a lot, because if you get two or more witnesses that are saying the exact same thing who don't know each other and don't know about each other, then you've got what appears to be the beginnings of what we might call a red flag or something worth looking into. So this is the kind of method we use. Also, obviously, we investigate people's backgrounds and when possible, keeping in mind that documents can be faked. And they are on a regular basis, especially if you're dealing with somebody who has already been working in black projects. And I've just written an article about this because I think it's a really important topic for people to get straight in their heads. The nature of what is evidence, what constitutes evidence. And so I highly recommend people go to my website, projectcamelotportal.com, and read that article. It's on the front page. It's called Evidence by Any Other Name. And, the idea here being that, you can fake a document just like Obama's birth certificate. Intelligence agencies do something called sheep dipping with their agents, a lot of times to basically discredit them purposefully. And there are other methods as well, some not as drastic. and sometimes it's outright discrediting. There's also the idea of an agent being what's called a knock, which is a non-official cover. There have been movies made about these types of things. So I just like, our witnesses, Project Camelot, which my specialty being whistleblowers from above top secret clearances, has to do with a lot of them are military, ex-military, ex-agents, and some, whether you ever become really an ex-agent, of course, is there are a lot of jokes about that. Mm-hmm. I agree. I tend to think no one really it becomes ex anything when you get in these black projects, and so on. So with that in mind, you have to understand that you're not going to be able to go on the internet and get good, truthful information on the background of any whistleblower. That I'm talking about above top secret type
right.
with whistleblowers, simply because it's not going to be there. It's just the nature of the game, so to speak. And so people want to be able to do that. They want to get a document, from 1954 that proves that, with stamps and all this kind of nonsense. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. In my article, you'll see I cite this. It's this. Christopher Crichton, who is a fascinating guy who was an intelligence agent during World War II and has written a book and was involved in, to some degree, an inspiration for the Ian Fleming James Bond series and so on. He wrote a book called OPJB. It's only available in print. It's quite old. I was turned on to it by Mike Sparks, who is a fabulous investigator, but also a whistleblower to some degree in his own right, who I've interviewed a number of times. But if you look in that book and you read what Crichton is saying, and Crichton is a very brilliant individual who really was involved in the intelligence game, in my view. But at any rate, he will talk about how the British regularly sheep dip information and how it happened to him. How he was they created a character, they gave him a different name, and he was known to be like a Nazi sympathizer and all these different things because they wanted him to be able to go undercover. And in fact, he did do so during World War II into Hitler's Germany. So this is the kind of thing we're talking about.
Now, you mentioned about, vetting, if you will, your witnesses. Do you think that's a big problem right now in our community, in the sense that a lot of these investigators or wannabe investigators are not doing their due diligence to, going back to the crucible thing, boiling it down to the essence and making sure what they're dealing with?
There are a lot of unschooled quasi-journalist broadcasters out there now, and it's great that back when we started, Camelot was quite unusual in that regard, but now it's actually more or less the flavor of the month, and young people are getting into it in droves, some more well-known than others. Other people are also coming out. And those people that are coming out may have what we call screen memories. Mm-hmm. They may have been mind controlled heavily. Some of them really do or have worked for the government in some capacity. That's possibly how they came under notice to begin with. And then sometimes they're used. And you might remember a long time ago, I interviewed somebody who became quite notorious at the time, Bill Brockbrader. Mm-hmm. And originally came out under another name that's escaping me at the moment, but I did a couple interviews with him, and eventually he was discredited in a sort of a major way, and yet he is legitimately from working with the military and in essence involved even in black projects and intelligence, sort of the intelligence field, loosely speaking, as a techie as well. But that's the kind of thing you get. You get someone who's like a very strange mixture of truth and some of their own conjecture and fantasy. He was also thrown into the brig for not shooting. He was supposed to destroy a a base in Iraq, a civilization, a city, I guess it was, and refused to do it. So he shot, according to his story, he shot the missile off course. I did see documentation to back that up, again with the caveat that things of this nature can be faked, but it looked pretty legitimate. And then he was actually thrown in the brig over supposed rape charges as well of a young girl who was a willing participant but underage. And that had happened several years before. And so what happened is they dragged that case, even though the parents never pressed charges, out in front of people, and then they proceeded to disinfo and to discredit Bill Brockrader. And all of this kind of came to a head. He went on the run. He was then thrown in jail in, I think it was Idaho, and he kind of disappeared. I don't know. I think he might have gotten out now, because I did hear from his partner. I'm not sure if they're still involved or not at one point. And he contacted me as well. So I can say that it's these are very murky waters that we deal in. And when you have intelligence agencies that are hell-bent on not letting you know who these people are, even if they find out they're out there whistleblowing, right? They try to disinfo them, and they will leak certain things to mainstream press even. And I can name so many people along these lines who have had all kinds of efforts to discredit their testimony, etc. And these are Camelot witnesses from way back. And I've been doing this for about 11 and a half years now.
So over the time, 11 and a half years, you've met quite a group of interesting people along the way. What are some of those that stand out in your mind as interviews that you've undertaken, and the interviews or the people themselves just kind of like floored you? If there is a person that can floor you, Kerry.
Well, I have always had a very open mind, so I don't throw anything out. Also because I rely a lot on my psychic sort of intuition on things, and because of that, it's actually done. It's paid off in spades, really, in Camelot. Mm-hmm. Kept us out of trouble in certain very important ways, et cetera, et cetera. And I also, I guess to go back to the earlier part of the interview, I also do get downloads of information. And sometimes I actually, in essence, interview the person in my dreams before I interview them in person. So, but to name some names, there's a very good list of solid, what I consider to be solid Project Camelot whistleblowers. And Bob Dean is one of them. Pete Peterson is another. Henry Deacon, which came out under his own name, Arthur Neumann, is another. Brian O'Leary, ex-Mars astronaut candidate, was another. There's a long list. And actually, I have to go back. I've interviewed, people don't maybe realize this, but I've interviewed on video over about 600 people. And then in radio shows, I did several years of radio shows as well, another group. So it's, I don't remember everybody's name after all these years and kind of have to refer to my prior sort of record of information. But let me see who else there is. Bill Hamilton was a great whistleblower. Leo Zagami, excellent whistleblower. John Roby, who came, eventually we released his real name, which is, Tony Dobbs, I guess it was. He was a former British, investigator, police officer who was in the know and contacted by people in the British government. And actually, the movie or the television show called Torchwood is based on the Tony Dobbs information. Which is all about aliens that are visiting this planet. And, it's said that the TSA scanners are really trying to detect whether you're human or not. That's really what they're about. And so on. The whole airport scanning thing is a real false front to just do other things as well. So let's say, who else would I talk about as a whistleblower? I guess Paul LaViolette as a scientist, very interesting information. He refused to get involved in black projects, but ended up revealing a lot of the stuff that they were already going down that road. Duncan O'Finian, one of the first super soldiers, very authentic. Dan Sherman, someone who worked for the military, incredible. Dan Burish and Marcia McDowell, part of MJ-12, and very controversial information, but nonetheless contains plenty of truth. Clifford Stone, fabulous whistleblower. Bariska, child who went to Mars, and who came from Mars, who had a past life recall of being a soldier on Mars, who we flew to Russia to interview. So, that's kind of a list for you. Gordon Novell, of course, George Green. These are the early, very solid. John Lear. John Lear's kind of a funny mixture, but he was whistleblowing for sure, and so on. So, and of course, Captain Mark Richards is more up to date. Somebody I've been interviewing now for I've done 6 interviews with him, and now I'm on my way back to do a 7th interview on August 20th.
Oh, wow.
So that's next weekend, actually. And I am looking for funds to help finance that trip because it does cost me money.
Sure.
To do the travel, gas, car, food and lodging. We stay in a hotel and so on. And, so there have been a number of other whistleblowers. Of course, Gary McKinnon, someone unforgettable, a British, young man who used a dial-up modem to reveal the fleet-to-fleet transfers and non-terrestrial officers, basically what is in essence solar warden in some ways, and certainly the space program. So I mean, we that was our specialty, and we ended up hitting the scene at a really crucial time, so that they hadn't quite got their act together, it would appear, or they were purposely allowing us to have this information. Kind of look at it how you wish. But there's no doubt that since then there's been a real clampdown. A lot of the whistleblowers who came out after a certain point, even I guess you might say kind of the edge of the iceberg was Snowden and Assange. When they started to prosecute whistleblowers, whistleblowers became a lot more few and far between, and maybe you could say questionable.
Well, speaking that, you've mentioned these whistleblowers and the government, it leads me into this next question, and that is, like Icarus flying so close to the sun, don't you worry about what's behind your back or who's following you? Or, I mean, do you have that, I hate to put it to the old, somebody's out there watching me in an unmarked car kind of situation, but I mean, Kerry, you've got a rich history of talking to these different whistleblowers.
Has anyone ever tried to silence you?
Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We've had threats. There's a piece of information. Well, it's more than a piece, but there's one case that we went out on. We flew to a certain location. We met with certain important people about this particular case. We were supposed to meet with the actual whistleblower themselves, and we got a phone call basically saying everything was off, that if we did anything to do with that particular case, that we, the person who had kind of contacted us in the beginning with regard to it, he and his family would be killed, and so on and so forth. So we did back off that particular case. And I can say I have dropped some hints over the years in regard to that. And let's see, I've gotten death threats. I got a very clear death threat relayed to me by a certain person. And what else do I say? We had a wheel cut off. A clean break. The whole wheel fell off our car when we drove to the top of what I think it's called Grindelwald in Switzerland.
Wow.
And we were on a windy, road up the Alps, and we just pulled into a little small parking lot, and the entire wheel fell off. Had it been, 10 minutes earlier, we might be toast. I don't know. Certainly was interesting. We had people break into our car. We have had multiple flat tires at one point, constantly. I know people have broken into my apartment. The lock. There's telltale signs of some of this stuff, like the lock stripped. Suddenly, I have to get the lock replaced, and so on. So, and of course, our website has been attacked 6 ways to Sunday. We even had a webmaster in the early days of Camelot who was volunteering to come on board at a certain juncture, and that night their entire apartment was trashed, their computer was trashed, and they contacted us the next day to say, never call them, never speak to them, they never want to hear anything from us from then on. So it's not just us that, I've also had my webmaster, Tommy, was interrogated at the airport, missed his connecting flight on purpose. They made it so. My current partner, same thing has happened to him. It's a long list. What do you want? I have been attacked by a scalar weapon and so on. So, Yes, I've survived. Look, as I'm told, I have a lot of sort of contact with various agents, and I'm told, if they really want to kill you, they'll kill you. But what I've had is also a lot of black magicians, a lot of nonsense go on, that kind of thing. So it's more that they're trying to shut me up or scare me, I think. I think maybe they gave up on all that now. And also, I just wrote an article on my site about a new trend that has seemed to be stimulated in 2016 is now really kicking off, which involves these what I'm calling disclosure teams. And I have sort of delineated them in my article. So if you go to my website and you look for my disclosure team article, I've also tweeted and Facebooked it just today again. That contains quite a bit of information about what I think is happening right now in terms of disclosure, which I do think is being amped up. And I believe in part due to, according to my witness, Mark Richards, what appears to be an added push from what is called the reptoids, which is a certain group of aliens who they're fighting, basically, who I guess live more or less underground, but they're battling them in Iraq and Syria right now.
Wow, fascinating. So, Kerry, let's do what we call speed round. I'm going to bring up a topic and just let us know what's the most relevant part of that topic that is in the forefront in your I guess your woods. And I guess the first one is conspiracies. What is the latest on that? A latest conspiracy that's out there that is trending.
God, I don't know.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you a curveball.
No, it's hard because I deal with nothing but conspiracies. I mean, my view of the world is, a conspiracy is when two or more people get together to plot some nefarious deed, which is indeed the definition of a conspiracy. So from my point of view and from that point of view, there's endless conspiracies out there. So what's trending right now? I mean, I just did an interview with Robert David Steele. First, I interviewed him. He's a former, if you want to call anybody a former, CIA officer, and he used to recruit agents. So he was on a higher level than an agent, from what I understand. And so that's CIA. He also has a background in the Marine Corps intelligence, and so on. And that's becoming somewhat notorious. He did an interview with me after I interviewed him. Either he thought of this all by himself, which is what he's probably going to say, or they put him up to it and it's part of a disclosure scheme. Nonetheless, he interviewed me, and it was a fascinating exercise because he actually timed my answers. His ploy was that he wanted to help Camelot to have what is he termed sort of an executive summary. So he peppers me with questions nonstop for 45 minutes, and I only have like 3 or 4 minutes each for each answer, and sometimes even less. He was not harassing me, for those people who think he was or think he wasn't respectful. He actually was very respectful. And it was a lot of fun. It was a challenge, I can say. And that information, the reason that whole thing came about, how I got in connection with him, was to do with a conspiracy. I am answering your question here.
That's fine.
Which has to do with children being shipped off to Mars and a Mars colony that Robert David Steele announced out of the blue on Alex Jones one day, and threw Alex Jones into a complete tizzy, if you want to call it that, and then got the mainstream to heavily attack, I guess, both Steele and Alex. Alex tried to get Robert Steele back on his show at the time. I saw the news about it. I thought, well, here's my opportunity. So I wrote to Robert David Steele, having been aware of his work for a while and his so-called disclosures. And I know that came out of left field. I believe he was put up to that, because this is what we call disclosure. So then what happened was Alex invited him back, but he wouldn't go back on his show, and he chose to go on mine instead. So I highly recommend my interview with him because I think it's quite revealing. in a number of ways, and so on. So that all of that is kind of, that's the latest conspiracy. So you might say that there's 10,000 people on Mars, and according to Robert David Steele, they're never coming back.
And are they hiding when the Mars rover goes around?
Well, I think in order to live on Mars, you have to be underground.
Right.
I understand, understanding. And the Mars rover, I mean, this is just nonsense. So,
it's fluff.
you have to understand that, NASA is a front agency. In some ways, they're a front and a back agency, because they've got more than one layer. So it's just important to keep in mind.
That was my next question for is the secret space program, black budgets, black projects. Is there anybody you've talked to or interviewed who has the best evidence for that?
Well, it is the subject. So the best evidence is out there. It's everywhere, in my view. But of course, I guess you'd have to start with early Camelot, because we were dealing on that subject nonstop with all the whistleblowers I've already named. So they are bringing forward the evidence to support that. Now, what you have to do is probably look at them and their backgrounds and see how they came to be involved in the secret space program. So, Henry Deacon, a.k.a. Arthur Neumann, who basically never did a sort of sit-down interview with me. In the early days, he was gave him an assumed name. He was in hiding. He definitely worked at high levels of the secret space program. He was what we call cross-disciplinary, which gave him sort of a wider view than some of the employees in the various programs. And so it's all in writing. So those transcripts are on, if you want to call them transcripts. They weren't really literally transcripts because we weren't allowed to take notes in process. It was similar to my interviews with Mark Richards. We had to remember the data and then compile it. In the case of Henry Deacon, though, these sort of notes, or whatever you want to call it, from the interviews we did with him were run by him for approval afterwards. And that goes on for several years. And then he went on stage in Barcelona as part of the Exopolitics conference that he was actually flown to as a guest and housed. And we were there also as part of that conference doing what is in essence a panel discussion with all the participants, which is that's on my YouTube channel. And Henry Deacon, at a certain point, at my urging actually, went on stage as part of the end of the Bob Dean presentation on Mars to say that he'd been working on Mars and jumping there through, in essence, what he kind of coined the phrase jump room.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where that term is now widely used, came from. And some people would say it's more like just a portal and so on. But nonetheless, he worked there on the regular basis. He has many health issues, I think, as a result of going through these portals. And he's still out there. He actually did come. I flew him to testify before the crowd at my Time Travel and Other Worlds conference back in 2013. So you can also watch that video. That's on Vimeo for some ridiculous low price, like $3. And that's filmed, and you can watch that. So I guess long answer to a short question.
That's fine.
Yeah, we love your long answers. I was going to say,
depth.
You're such a jet setter. You have a conference coming up here in September. Can you tell us a little bit about what to expect out of that?
Oh, right. So I will be speaking at the Miles Johnston Conference, which is being held in Ireland, which is going to be a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I did go to Dublin and speak once a few years ago, so it's going to be great to go back. Miles Johnston, I've interviewed him, and he's a person who does a similar job to mine. And he's quite well known for what is called the Bases Project. So let's see. I will be talking about some of the things I'm talking about here, some of the things I'm writing articles about, and just the latest testimony. Since I'm going to see Mark Richards, I'll very likely be talking about the new Mark Richards testimony that I get, and so on. So let me just say, I don't know when this will go out live on your show, but I would like to encourage people to send me questions for Mark Richards. If there's anything that he's talked about that you'd like further explanation on, or you'd like to ask him a question you don't think he's ever discussed, send me a question and get it to me this week. So maybe this interview is going to be after the fact. I don't know, but
well, I know that Sirlana and I can put out the media and
it'll be this month. It'll be not this Saturday, but next.
Yeah, but still, we can go ahead and
Mark Richards he's the one who talks about the Nazis versus the Nordics. Is this the idea that Hitler was trying to get everyone in Germany to be blonde, blue-eyed because that's what the Nordics look like? He was trying to prepare maybe their way into Earth, or maybe I've got that completely wrong.
Well, that's a one way of looking at it, certainly. I don't think it's quite that simple, but is a bloodline issue. And the race from Aldebaran are said to be basically fascistic in nature, and that the Nazis kind of were influenced by them, or in a very big way. And Maria Orsic and the whole contact with these beings, as well as possibly a group of Nordics that were not the ones from Aldebaran, but they're also Nordic looking. Mm-hmm. So you get what you seem to be referring to is my interview with William Tompkins, who is a more recent whistleblower, who's come out and seems to be sponsored by the Navy, or at least a portion of the Navy. He says he reports to Bobby Ray Inman. So my interview with him is, I think, required viewing, and that was conducted, I think, about a year ago. And then more recently, he refused to speak to me further. I think they shut him down because they were afraid of the kinds of things he was revealing. He's hard to control. He's an older man. He's very older. And he's also got a sort of, a dangling carrot, which has to do with if he does what they tell him to do, he basically is going to get these reverse aging pills that the secret space program has at their disposal, which he testifies to in my interview. So, but Mark Richards also talks about that. This is the interesting thing. They didn't know about each other. Mm-hmm. I did send William Tompkins' book after I interviewed him to Mark Richards. He became aware of him. And the funny thing is that Mark Richards had been talking about the Nordics and the reptilians for years before Tompkins came to the fore talking about it. So this is where you get a good corroboration between two top whistleblowers, really.
Well, Kerry, it's just a fascinating...
I could talk to you for hours.
I mean, hours, but we want to be respectful in the sense that, we appreciate you taking the time. But before you go, it's always important that we let our guests, let us know what your social media is, what upcoming books you have coming up. So this is your chance to promote. So go ahead and don't be bashful.
Okay, no problem with that with me. Let's see. ProjectCamelotPortal.com is my main website. You can also put in ProjectCamelot.org. And I think we're also creating the project, ProjectCamelot.tv is a new URL because we're finding that we're being blocked in certain countries. So we're trying to get beyond the censors. And so we're going to see if we can get my website to show up on other URLs. But those URLs, and then my YouTube channel, which is, you just put Project Camelot and you'll find it, but Jagbod, Jagbodi, which is a name I gave it very early on, which has to do with Bodhisattva and a jaguar. And the song Jaguar is the sort of the theme song of Project Camelot that I co-wrote with my previous ex-husband, who is a rock musician. And I wrote the words, and the words were actually a poem that I wrote when I was in my early 20s, being abducted in New York City and studying acting and directing. So I think I've given you all the links. There's my Facebook page. All of this is on projectcamelotportal.com, so you can get the links there. But Facebook is the one I really use all the time, which is Kerry Cassidy. That's my personal Facebook page, but Project Camelot is also there. Let's see, what else? Twitter, Project Camelot, no spaces. And I Twitter every day. I have my life basically now, so very important to join Twitter. What else do you have? There's so many. LinkedIn. I've got so many LinkedIn people that, join, and I accept everybody. These are PR sort of ways of putting out your message, the way I see it.
Right.
So I'm not worried about personal privacy. We are all surveilled heavily at this point. You kind of have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to realize that. I also highly recommend the Oliver Stone movie of Edward Snowden to kind of focus your mind if you don't know anything about this.
Yeah, we saw it. It was a good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, this is just the story of our sort of planet at this time. We're also all telepathic, so we have one up on the secret state in some ways that way. I have special, I'm what you call a person of interest, so I will have more surveillance than the average person, I'm sure. But that just goes with the territory.
But I guess, as you pointed out on Project Camelot, the best place to hide is out in the open. So
that's my point of view. And I do want to give a plug right now. I don't know what's going to happen with it, but Sean David Morton is on the run. He's a fabulous author who's written a very important set of books from a whistleblower and turned them into fiction as he was requested to do. It does appear now that he might still be in touch with that whistleblower. I believe the SEC went after him heavily because of this. So he's up on charges of a financial nature, but the real reason they've gone after him, I believe, has to do with these books, which are called Sands of Time. And I believe there's 2 editions out there now and a third one, or maybe there's 3, and then he's working on the 4th. Anyway, he's on the run. He's going to be on my show. I think he must be outside the country. And he's going to come on my show tomorrow at, I guess it's going to be 1 p.m. Pacific time. Wow. So it'll be fun to hear from him.
Indeed. Well, Kerry, I appreciate you coming on. Did you want to say anything before I'm looking at Solana?
Oh, no, just will you be in the country when the eclipse happens? You get to see
Actually, Sean, Sean is also a psychic, and he is going to be talking about his take on the eclipse. I've gotten a lot of people contacting me about the eclipse. I kind of think it's much ado about nothing, but nonetheless, because disclosure is happening, because all these other things are going to happen. Earth changes. We're going down that road, from what I understand. We just had the Perseid, I think it's called. Maybe I'm saying it wrong. Meteor shower. Yeah. I saw a majorly large meteor. Maybe it was even a craft, tree level, literally, going sideways. And right in front of me, like 2 nights ago, and I Twittered it. But it was huge. I mean, it was a bright, fiery something.
Right.
So maybe it's a meteor, maybe it wasn't, because we didn't get a crash or hear any reports of any meteors crashing the ground. So to be that low at tree level and not crash to the ground and still be a meteor, I don't know, maybe it went blinked out interdimensionally at that point. I don't know. It was going incredibly fast. So yeah, I mean, what can I say? Lots going on around the eclipse. It may be a kickoff point, more than anything else. And there have been several of those. There's also a lot of disinfo out there, so just be warned.
Indeed. Well, Kerry, thank you for being a part of the universe, and I hope that you will allow us to reach out to you in the future and bring you back in and pick your brain on some more subject matter, because you, like 11 years, is just a wealth of information, and to not get a second chance to pick your brain would be I would cry about it.
And I would make fun of him for doing it.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, you too. And you have a great evening.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Wow, what a fascinating interview, right, Solana?
Yes, indeed. I hope we do get to talk to her again.
I'm sure. We kind of showed her that we could talk to her and not be like so out in left field. But that was, out of all the interviews, to get a hold of somebody, it was difficult. But
we played Skype tag for a month
Mm-hmm.
because she has a packed schedule. But we didn't give up. So,
Oh.
again, we apologize for the emergency warnings on our phone. Yeah, like we don't know we're going to flood. So,
duh. I'm sure that there will be more Kerry Cassidy in the future. She is a wealth of information, and after 11 years, it was good stuff. So, Solana, let's take a break.
Mm-hmm.
And when we come back, we're going to open up the phone lines for all those who want to call in to the universe, and we'll chit-chat with you. So here's some more rocket music from Space Boy. Yes, this is the universe that has Space Boy in front of it, but it is a combination. We're kind of like Regis and Kelly in a way sometimes.
Oh, God, please don't tell me we're that annoying.
I'm like Regis and you're Kelly. So, but...
no.
Anyway, so, Kerry Cassidy, it reminds me of the Project Serpo, which is a great story.
You
which
told me
should
about
be
that.
It should be a movie of some kind, but...
You told me about that. I can't remember when you told me that. It was quite a while back, and you'd take... I don't know if you told me to Google it or go to this specific site, but I don't know what site. I don't know if it's around. It was a very plain, vanilla-looking site, and it was just the entire story of Project Serpo.
Yes.
And it was done really well, like almost like somebody was writing a journal that was, that went through the experience. But I read it like a sci-fi story.
That's how I kind of read it too. You know,
these astronauts go willingly with these aliens. One of them dies on the way there.
And they really weren't astronauts; they were military personnel.
Well,
and there was a group of.
If you go into space now, you're an astronaut.
A group of, I think it was 10. It could be 12. I'm not. I'm sure it's been a while since I've actually read.
The account I remembered is from one guy. Like only one guy made it.
It came back.
Or came back to talk about it.
And I think there were 5 of them. There were 2 that died
on the way.
And 1 died on the way. 2 died on the planet, and then 2 decided to stay behind. And
I remember a passage about them trying to teach them baseball or something like that.
I do remember there was some kind of alien sport. And I found it interesting that the way it was described was it wasn't like, how we have art and we have, aesthetics like that. They were not into things like that. They were very...
Yeah, they had a different...
I hate to use the phrase, they were gray.
They're very vanilla.
Very vanilla. and then, of course, the incident that happened where they took one of the dead bodies and they were going to,
one of our guys' dead bodies.
And they were going to, take samples.
Do things with it.
Yeah, exactly. And our team got bent out of shape.
That's sacred and you can't do that.
And then I guess their military aspect of their group, referring to the aliens, it got into this big kind of squabble between the both of them, but it's a fascinating story. So if you can dive into that, I highly recommend it. It makes for good reading, and Sirlana, you're telling me we got somebody on the line?
Yeah, we've got Dino and a second caller. I've got them both on here. I don't know which would like to go first.
Who is... okay, we know Dino's on. Who's on the other line? Who's...
This other caller, are you there?
Yes.
It's Bev.
It's Bev and Bob. Hold on.
It's frickin' frack.
Hold on, Dino. Don't go anywhere. Let's deal with this couple. So, Bob, you went rocking tonight. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, it was pretty good. It was fun.
What did you... I didn't get a chance to see... Who did you go see?
I think they were called Ball and Chain, but it was a Janis Joplin cover band.
Huh. So it
was fun.
My sister, an avid, can you help me out here?
Avid?
Thank you. Singer, she would cover Bobby McGee and all those classics from Janis Joplin. And she really could belt them out. So did they do a pretty good performance?
Overall, I give her a B+. She didn't have the scream, the scream part of Janis's vocals down, but the main part she had pretty good.
Well, cool.
So, the guitar player, he was really good. He had that blues down good.
Don't you have a few axes yourself, Bob?
What?
Don't you have a few guitars yourself?
Yeah, I got a couple Ks. I got a K, shoot.
Put you on the spot, didn't I?
K acoustic, and I got a K, shoot. It's the one that's, the guitar player for AC/DC uses.
Oh, okay.
Their brand. So, I had a Fender, but I had to sell it a while back.
There's nothing worse than to have to sell your Fender. I've been there in that situation, too.
Yeah, but I'm been pretty happy with the J. Tercer guitars. They're pretty easy to play and not bad sound for the price range.
Well, I picked my favorite guitar, a Parker Fly, because it's thin and it presses good against the old spare tire.
I understand that all too well. Mine's overinflated most of the time.
So, Bev, are you there?
I sure am.
So, how did you deal with Bob being out of the I guess the house tonight?
Was it like a vacation?
Oh, kind of. it was kind of boring.
So he brings the spice in the life.
I was with my aunt. She's 9 months older than me, so she's like my sister. So we had a good time.
Yeah, she was kind of an oopsie baby.
So was I. I was told.
Oh, ouch. Yeah, it was kind of lonely here without him.
Yeah, she was saying in chat, Bob, that she was crying and she didn't know what she was going to do, and
I believe it.
She was all heartbroken.
Oh,
bent out of shape.
After 30 years of marriage, I know better.
It was kind of a nice break, but
That reminds me of when you used to went to class and I would have all that extra time before, you came home.
See, the difference between Solana and myself is that, we always work, and then finally when we're together, it's like I do like spending time, even if she's like on her computer. I just like being in the same room with her.
What is it with men and being in the same room with them? They think you've got to be in the same room with them all the time. It's like, I'm in the house. Like that's good enough, surely.
Well, good company.
Well, see, back in the day, like my aunt, we used to go out and party together, and, I was her wingman. So, yeah, she didn't want to be bothered. She'd hang out with me. Somebody thinks she was with a date. So, it worked out pretty good for her.
But it was kind of nice, because when you spend 24/7 together, you do kind of get on each other's nerves at times. But
Times 30 years.
Look, we're
or
never
80. I don't remember anymore.
We are never together 24 hours today because
we have jobs,
and you like to sleep late, and I've been giving you your space to sleep late.
Yeah, but he wants me to give him all these gold stars and medals because he didn't wake me up, and I'm like, well, you shouldn't be doing that anyway.
Well, yes,
under any circumstances.
Yes. Well, there's so much to do on a weekend when we're not working, and it's difficult.
Yes, some Saturdays we do have things to do, and I know going into it, yes, but if I ask you on Friday, what do we got to do tomorrow? And you say nothing. That's like, well, then don't friggin' mess with me the next day.
Oh,
hey,
God,
is K28 driving by your house?
I haven't seen him.
I hear the train in the background. That's what I was asking.
Oh, yeah. That's our friend. We got 2 tracks behind the house.
It's basically in our backyard.
I like that. I miss that because before I moved to Texas, I was like less than a block from an active train track. So I kind of miss hearing that.
When I lived with my grandmother.
Yeah, and every once in a while, we get the old nickel plate steam engine comes through here.
Nice.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, I was saying.
Yeah.
I was saying I lived with my grandparents for a while, and when I was a kid, and there was a train close by too, and it was always nice to hear the train in the middle of the night. I mean, it wasn't too overly loud, but you could definitely hear it. And it's like I guess people that like to listen to Ring to go to sleep or things like that.
Yep.
And hear the clickety clack of the train. A good old Santa Fe coming through the town.
Oh, what's really nice is we have a metal roof on our house, and the sound of the rain hitting it, it's so comforting.
Well, hopefully.
But yeah, it's like everywhere we've lived, there's been a train track within a mile of our house.
Yep.
We've never been able. I've never been able to escape them. So it was meant to. We end up here. So I'm happy.
Oh, I am too.
See, there is some happiness in the old household there.
Eh.
Well, hey guys,
90%.
we've
Yeah,
got
90%.
we've got Dino waiting. So
Unless y'all want to do a three-way.
Well, okay.
so
I'll try to behave myself.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, it was good to hear from y'all.
He's safe.
we're gonna try.
Well, I mean, not much we can do. We don't plan to leave.
Yeah, it's going to be restricted for a few days anyhow. It bites.
Yeah.
Great. But been there, done that. All except for us, it's a blizzard.
Yeah.
So,
Well, don't know what that's like. Never seen one.
Oh, you don't want to.
yeah, 6-7 feet of snow or 12 feet. Yeah, on the bullet trip. No fun.
No, it's not.
All right, well, we'll let you guys go.
Well, good to hear
We
from you,
love you
Bob,
guys.
and we love you too, Bev.
Oh, you guys stay hunkered down and take care.
Yes.
We will.
Yes.
All right,
Okay.
bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, is Dino still there?
You still there, Dino?
Yeah.
There he is.
Hold on. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Turn your radio
Now
down.
I'm off
Turn your
speak-
radio
I'm
down.
off speaker.
Thank
No,
you.
I'm off speaker.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air.
You're a good sport there, Dino.
Well, I had to call in, and I just was kind of monitoring you today. I didn't get much done, but we finally got some warmer weather. We're closer to the ocean now, and this last month, everybody else has been dying of heat, and we've been fogged in so much. I missed the eclipse because of it, but it was nice to see how the eclipse affected so many people. Some people who, I guess, don't always look above our planet, and I saw one guy, I think he worked for NASA, actually. It was on one of the live network feeds, it might have been CBS, and he started crying when it went to totality. And I mean, that's great, but it told me the guy's out of touch. He's got this job with NASA, and it deals with space, but anyway, I wish I would have seen it. It was already kind of very gray, and when he where I live, it was not a full coverage, but since it was fogged in and overcast all day, I did notice how quiet. It was already pretty quiet, but how quiet everything got, and instead of getting dark, it got a different shade of gray. It was kind of interesting, and the birds. Again, I'm very upset that I had this overcast because I don't know what the effect would have been. I wanted to see the effect. At any rate.
Well, I feel your pain because I didn't really watch it either, but the eclipse is coming to Texas. Do you remember when that is, Solana?
Like 7 years from now, there'll be a path of totality that goes
Yeah.
like right over Dallas and Austin, San Antonio, so we could like drive to it.
Right, exactly. So we'll probably check it out, the Texas eclipse. Because, everything's,
Yeah, you'll have to.
If we're
everything's
not
big in Texas.
dead by then,
Well, that's if the rumors of the October... October...
Well, yeah, we got to get through
Nibiru-
October, yeah.
Nibiru coming from the South Pole doesn't destroy the Earth or something.
Well, see, that's why I called. I had you guys on a positive note, and Sirlana had to go there. I keep telling you, you've got a force field around you from all your listener cadets here, and nothing's going to happen. And quit, making that as an afterthought of everything we're saying. I know it can be scary, and I know I've been in situations where you can't control it. So if you can't control it, someone mentioned, was that your sister mentioned the Beatles song? I mentioned the Beatles song, Let It Be.
It's probably
Speaking
Bob,
words
too.
of wisdom. Yeah, you can't do it. You can't do anything. You've done as much as you can, then you just let it be and put your mind to other things, because the more you worry about it, definitely not going to change it, so you might as well not worry about it. So that's my wish to you guys, and Now, Kerry Cassidy couldn't come on live with you.
Yeah, because
so
the
you had to get-
scheduling thing, and we tried to get her to come on our normal night. Because ultimately, it is a show where we're engaging the space cadets and the chat, and it flows back and forth with the live show because the show is dynamic, and we found that is the best way to do the show. But unfortunately, her schedule, and so we had to book. We did it on a Monday. And so that's how that went down.
We felt it was better than nothing.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, because we really wanted to talk to her.
It's our first time talking to her, so we wanted to establish a good relations with her, so maybe we could talk to her again at some point.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's good. I mean, there's some people. Everybody's got an opinion about all these researchers and interviewers, and this crazy field that many of us are involved with the extraterrestrial and conspiracy thing, and it can get to be a negative thing. But Kerry to me can be interesting because of how she, whether she snoops them out or they come to her, but she puts people on, and sometimes you don't know if you believe them or not, but she puts people on you I don't think I would hear anywhere else sometimes. And that's what I like about her, and I haven't talked to her in over a year. I think when I talked to Mark Richards' wife last spring at one conference, the same conference I met John D'Souza at, it was kind of interesting to see her in person, see how she is. And Kerry seems to try to help her out as well. And I think she had her own program for a while. Mark Richards' wife, forgetting her first name now, Ann Richards, right? So at any rate, that's what I liked about it. I wanted to talk with Kerry. I asked Ann Richards to tell her that, I'm strange, but I'm harmless, so that she'd make friends with me on Facebook. I think she did, so every so often I go over. But she's a mover. She's always out, moving to a new place or finding someone else to interview. So, I mean, I hope you get her back on because I'd like to talk to her live through your program.
I'm sure it's an inevitability she'll be back. Like Solana was saying, we wanted to get our toe dipped into the pool and show to her that, we're very capable of talking to her.
I'm still stunned it even happened at all.
Well, it was that Galaxy Quest motto: "Never give up, never surrender" kind of thing.
I was hoping we weren't being a pest.
And I love listening to Kerry because she could be a no nonsense kind of person. I mean, she is not afraid to hold back, and that's what I liked about her. And we kind of giggled about that during the interview. That it's refreshing for her to hear her ask the questions that we would want to ask of the various guests that she's had over the 11 years that she's been doing her YouTube and other interviews elsewhere through Project Camelot. And she's just a great wealth of information. And, man, we will have her back at some point.
Well, I want to say something about that, but quickly, Sirlana, there you go again. Now, this is two really great guests you've had. Remember, you had Stan Romanek on. No one else had him on. That shows that you guys have something, so don't worry about it.
Well, he called us. We didn't call him.
You're being journalists. Well, but still, you were being a good journalist, and you made the story, and this time, like most of the time, you're going to have to go after guests to convince them that you're because you are a form of journalism. You're on air and all that, and that's just part of your job. Don't be negative and say, "Oh, I can't believe we got someone." No, because that's your job. Okay, so as far as Kerry, what you were just saying, Space, the same thing, and I've experienced this personally, the same thing that some people love about one's personality, mine or anybody else's, or any announcer or any guest, you'll find many people who hate them for the same reason, for lack of, who knows, and I've found that out, you can't please everybody.
That is true. I mean, you walk this fine line when you're doing a broadcast. Of course, we have personal lives, and we have ways of thinking, but we try not to bring that to the arena, if you will. because we're not here to alienate our listening public. We want to present things in an open forum where you, the listener, makes a decision on your own. And I've always felt that, I have friends from all different walks of life. And it's important for me to foster that because I find you as a human to be interesting because you're not me. You have something that you can bring to me that I haven't experienced before, I've never thought of before. And to go down a path of, blindfolding myself and saying that my way is the only way, then, I'm only doing myself an injustice. And that's why it's important for me to listen to everyone.
Yeah, this is the dance you talk about. It's the yin to the yang, and it's the dance that, you can dance by yourself, and there's a lot of good in that sometimes, but the yin and the yang, the dance between the two, the positive and the negative, sometimes can show truth and can definitely be entertaining if it gets dramatic. But, what I like about your show is you don't get overly dramatic. There's not a lot of ego in it, and you're doing your job. You're trying to bring interesting, maybe new ideas to your audience so that we can, that's why you started your show, I'm sure. We want the truth. For years, I bought the party line on many things, but I was taught when I was young, start thinking, you're comfortable where you live, with the people you know, and if you don't sometimes break out and try a different perspective, even if you think it's horrible. And that brings me to my topic of today. We had locally here, there was a permit issued on government property at the Presidio that they were going to have this group here today that everybody's saying are neo-Nazis, and they've brought violence with them where they've been. And I won't mention their name or the guy that run. And then all of a sudden they canceled. And then today they did a pop-up press conference. They went to a park in the city. And if you watch the interview, the guy seemed kind of sincere, and people were saying he's racist and all. And yet there was a black man standing behind him that I think was a supporter. I don't know. He could be a con man, but the thing is it really, the current politics are shaking people up one way or the other, and it's really polarizing. Mm-hmm. And I came out a couple of days ago and said, look, if you don't like what these people are doing, if they've been granted a permit, I don't think they should have been, maybe, but First Amendment. But then people are countering me saying, well, you're not being racist, are you? I said, no. But they said, I agree that the First Amendment has limits. The freedom of speech, if you're not trying to incite violence, then it's not free speech under our laws anyway. If you're trying to spread lies that will cause harm or deception, that's borderline free speech. That's why all of us have to check sources and check for truth. And that's what your program is about. I've never seen you try to sway people in your audience one way or the other.
Yeah, it obviously I've got there is a lot of opinions that I have, but it's sad to see.
I don't know enough about any one subject to be able to do that.
Media in general has been fear-mongering the situation and making it much worse than it should be. That's what I hate about media in general.
They're doing it with a hurricane.
Hold on just a second here, Solana. Let me get my thought across before I forget. The thing is with media is that they, constantly promote the fear instead of promoting the solution. It's so easy for them to say, the hurricane is going to destroy all of Texas, and you shouldn't live there, and blah blah blah, or the neo-Nazis that were marching over here promoting fear, and there's 30,000 people all here taking statues down or whatever. they are promoting the fear, the perpetual fear. And I say this so many times, we need to break the cycle of this fear. It does us no good to keep us in a state of fear. And it's important as we promote this universe that we broadcast weekly, that we propose solutions and ideas and keep an open mind to things, and not to put us in a situation where we're afraid of the world or the universe for that matter. You were going to say, Solana?
No, it's gone now.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to get that out. I mean, because it is a subject matter that, it concerns me. One thing that the Space Cadets know is that when they come to this show and they get in the chat room, they know they're in a safe environment. I try to promote that. I've personally been affected by hatred and racism, and it's not a nice thing. However, I do believe that people should have the right to be able to say things. But on the same thing, I believe you shouldn't be able to yell fire in a theater, and there is a law against that. But that's what I'm talking about, in the sense that it's important that people should be able to speak out, because it does us no good if they go into the shadows. Because all that perpetuates is the things like the Illuminati. What are they saying behind closed doors? What are these secret organizations saying? What are they doing? They're secret organizations. We have no idea, other than the theories that come out from different people. So, I understand where people want to say, shut people up, and I don't want to hear it. But we can't fall down in that path. We've got to grow a little bit of thick skin and say, I don't like it. I don't want it. So I'm going to go the other way and not listen to it. But at the same time, I still know what they're saying, where they're coming from, and what to expect if something's coming down my way. So, that's what I have to say about that. And I think that it's important that we hear what's out there so that we can be informed, instead of being a lemming ready to fall off the cliff.
That is well said, and it's all the same topic. The media, too often, if it leads, it leads. And part of that, people say, well, you conspiracies. Well, there are conspiracies that are true. And I don't know whether, and this is a fact that we all, I think, on this program know, and a lot of our audience knows, that the media in America now is owned by something like 5 or 6 corporations, all media. We're talking about newspaper, radio, television, local news broadcast, national news broadcast. Now, if you speak to an individual reporter or an anchor at your local town news station, or, I don't know, the guy whoever is anchoring CBS nightly news now, many of them might tell you, oh, no one tells me what to do and all that. But we all know that it is a fact that media is owned, and indirectly by these 5 or 6 different companies, corporations, entities. There are subtle ways, even if not overt ways, that they can influence what gets on the air as news. And we see it. And we see it on the nightly news. I don't watch it as regularly as I did. I'm a big CBS guy and have been, but I don't watch it because the commercials come on, and most of the commercials are for pharmaceutical companies. Mm-hmm. So you better understand that if you rub them the wrong way with too many stories, they're going to pull their advertising. So everything you said is what we're talking about, and I'm not supporting that, and a lot of people counter-demonstrated and all, but it just seemed to me when you have a small group, maybe there's more, I don't know, if you talk to my black people I know, or they, there's racist everywhere. Well, I don't know. Only know what I know. I know you in a different town. I have other friends. I have friends in my town. And I know people I work with, I get along with. And the media can stir things up by, even if it's not, I don't know, maybe it is intentional. Maybe that's the conspiracy. But even if it's not, just by the format and the fact that they put the horrible stories first so that people will stay watching the news for a half an hour, can affect the psyche of the entire nation or the entire world. And so that's what was going on today. I don't know. This guy could be a con guy, this spokesperson. But I must say, he's a good con guy if he is. He was saying, we were felt threatened. Well, that could be BS. But the point is, I kept telling people, let them, if the permit, I wouldn't have granted him, but if it's free speech, let them do it. If they were carrying a weapon, I don't know, but there was plenty of law enforcement that would have been there. The problem comes when you get in their face, because I think some of them wanted that. And if you get in their face, it becomes a battle on public turf, and that's not what it's about. We should be fighting with the pen and not with the sword in our country.
Indeed, and I just want to elaborate a little bit further here. Is that I get my news sources from everywhere, from Fox all the way to MSN, because I need to paint a broad picture. It's like I was saying, if I cover my eyes, I'm only doing myself an injustice. I pull from what I'm seeing and hearing from across the spectrum. It's important. Now, whether I believe all of it, that is where I'm doing my research. I'm going out there. I'm finding this. I'm finding that. And the conclusions I'm drawing is not very good of the media in general. And that's why it's important to hear it all. I mean, whether you agree or disagree to what you are listening to, but at least listen to it so that you can formulate an opinion and draw your own conclusions. I'm hovering back to Jim Mars, and I brought him up several times because of his passing, but he said, and it's something that resonates with me to this very day, is don't take my word for it. Go out there and find the truth for yourself. And it's so very true, and that's one thing that I will always cherish about Jim Mars is that, hey, I've found all this stuff on my own. You go out there and find it. Don't just take my word for it. And that's why it's so important, Space Cadets, that you go out there and if you listen to our show and you hear something, don't take it for face value. Sirlana's a great researcher and all that, but, she took the time to find that out there. So don't take our word for the final product. Go out there and find the truth for yourself.
No, I think that's what we need to continue doing, and we can get lazy. And I know the internet is a wonderful thing, but sometimes you even have to check the stories you read on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Used to be you had to go to the library to read some current magazines. I used to make a trip. I haven't done it in years, so at least you knew, this is a left-leaning magazine, this is a right-leaning. I was taught that in my civics class in high school by my teacher. He said, try to have different sources. Go to a known source that's more right-wing, go to an orange left-wing, and read in the same week how their take is on a particular current event. And then maybe you can think a little bit about, what makes most sense to me. But anyhow, your program, continue to bring on good people. And, of course, in the search for truth, Stan Romanek, after this trial is over, I hope that you will, if they don't come to you, he and his wife.
It is over, and didn't work out good for him, but I think they might try to appeal.
The October is when the sentencing takes place. I
hadn't heard that.
Yeah, they did find him guilty, but I don't know.
Yeah, see, we talked about this on the Quantum Hologram Matrix while John was traveling.
Filling in for one of his shows.
Yeah, and Eric Awakening Man had gone up there to see what the...
Yeah, he was in court with them.
Yeah, he was in...
was he?
Yeah.
Yes.
So he filled us in on what happened, and he actually got to talk to Lisa.
At this point, I'm sure they're going to appeal, but I'm sure if the court lays down, for sentencing, I'm hoping that, the worst case scenario is that they slap him where they put I can't think of the statute of what it is for having porn
Well, there's one for possessing, and there's one for distributing, and he wasn't distributing.
No, he wasn't distributing.
But I don't think he's possessing either. But
yeah, I don't. Yeah. I mean, we've been very
well,
clear.
That was my question.
Yeah.
What was Eric's take? If he was in the classroom, did he feel like it was really a true thing, or in listening to the testimony and all, did he feel it could have been a setup?
Well, one, you had the police officer testify in this and thing,
I still think it's a setup,
and
yeah.
I think it's a setup because this guy is a dirtbag.
That officer, the arresting officer.
The arresting officer. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but apparently he has had trouble prior to the court case where he's, come across as a dirty cop and not somebody you can trust, and yet they put him on as their star witness to testify against Stan. And what frustrates me is to hear that Stan couldn't bring a lot of evidence forward, and because of one reason or another.
Yet this cop can testify with all his scandals he attached to him as a credible person.
So yeah.
Well, did someone know who tipped off the cop? I mean, who made the charge initially so that the officer would come and arrest him? I never heard where that came from.
Eric might know.
Yeah, Eric might know. We could follow up with him and find that information out.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I mean, I'm just kind of sorry to hear that.
No, yeah.
I mean,
anyway,
I think we need to follow through on this and find the truth out.
This is exactly what we set out to do. Is at some point, Miss Elliott is a reference that comes to mind in this case, who's done a lot of research in this, and I think I'm going to reach out to her to see if we can get her on the universe to talk a little bit more about the case in general and to get the nuts and bolts of what has happened and transpired. So just look for something like that in the near future.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, so this all, ties together with what we're talking about what you want on your program, how you conduct it, and that's why, and I know I'll be listening a lot more as we get into fall because I'm not doing chores outside. I miss these things, and I got to get emails to remind me because I don't think it's just getting older. I mean, I try to keep a sharp mind, but there's so many things now. I mean, every place you go, there's an appointment here. There's a entertainment event. There's a television show you want to catch, and I can't keep up, especially when I'm working, and that's why when I say I go off the res during the summers, I got wild. I grew my hair out, and I was doing what I want when I wanted. Might be up 3 in the morning.
Hold on, Dino. You're like me. You grew out what hair you have, and
I have a lot of hair left. It's just not as much on top. It's all around. It got pretty long.
I like to just say
people were reacting to me differently.
My yarmulke covers some of my hair, and
That's why people used to think I was Jewish, because that's where it started. On most men, seem to me, they get the baldness from the front. Mine years ago it was quite a while. It was started from the crown and went out, But no, I still have a lot of thick hair. When I grow it out, people are aware. They go, "You have a lot of hair, just not so much on top."
Right.
And I'm not bald. I'm thinned out. I still have hair on top, but it's awful thin. So anyhow, I just got it trimmed yesterday. I said, and let it long. I grew it for the summer of love, and the authorities wouldn't let us. They put a lot of roadblocks in our way. And Angela Aliotto, whose father was mayor of our city years ago, and who served on our board of supervisors and is a civil rights lawyer, she came to our defense. But she made a comment a couple of days ago about these demonstrators that are right-wing demonstrators coming. She said, she goes, that's what happens when government denied our Summer of Love permit for, free live music and love and compassion for the 50th anniversary, and they got the Summer of Hate at the end of the summer by granting this permit, Although, to be accurate, it was on federal property that the permit was granted. But they didn't show up today, so, there was never going to be a demonstration. Maybe it just caused a lot of consternation, and we'll see what the next chapter is. They have some agenda. I don't know what they're going to do next, but I think they have a right to speak, And someone mentioned that they had weapons. I don't know. I didn't see any weapons. You know, you hear it again. You got to be careful where your source is from.
Sure, and true indeed. Like I said, I agree with you 100%, Dino. When things get violent, then that's unnecessary. I mean, I hate to sound like my grandparents when I say this, but there was a time in America where we could have a civil conversation with our neighbors.
Nobody's feelings getting hurt.
With our and
people and their dadgum feelings. Everybody has the emotional maturity of a 14-year-old girl.
And it's a shame that it's come to that. But I still hold on to those truths that we can still sit down and have a conversation. And it's important that we, and I say we, us and the Spaceboy Universe Space Cadets and audience out there, let them know that you could come here and let's have a conversation and let's be friends and you know, do what we used to do before the world got chaotic. You know, I will freely admit that I love everyone that comes to this to our show, and I'm colorblind. Just blind in general when it comes to the people that come to our chat, because I appreciate
and the respect that you show comes across.
Yeah. And then I'm constantly reminded by Sirlana that Icarus, you're getting too close to the sun.
Well, that's it. I mean, you know, it comes across. You don't need to make a statement about it. It's very evident from how you conduct your program. And, you know, one real quick thing. I mean, there was this Ku Klux Klan, identified Ku Klux Klan and his wife that were interviewed recently by some, yeah, and I mean, that was a horrible thing, but what did they expect when you send, you know, a woman who's African American? It's like the media wanted, again, there's that, they wanted to stir something up to interview
poke
this
the
guy.
bear. They were trying to poke the bear.
They were trying to, and I thought she handled it well. She goes, well, I find that, you know, he did call her a name, and she goes, I find that offensive, but at least she didn't blow up and start screaming. And, you know, it was kind of disgusting. But he had a right to be interviewed, and if they wanted to stop the interview, they didn't, you know.
See,
and
that,
again, it brought media.
In that
rating.
situation, and I don't mean to interrupt, but in that situation is that you got to see where you stood with them, and it was important to hear what they have to say, because once again, if we push these people in the shadows, then we're going to become paranoid as a society, because we're not going to know where the threats come from. And that's why it's important to hear all sorts of various opinions. And so, you know, on the end of her end, you know, she did what she had to do, and things were said, but she, you know, didn't trip out, like you said, and that was important.
Well, all I can say is I've been through some hazing and disrespect throughout my life, partly because I didn't have brothers or sisters to fight with me, and I understand, you know. But what I learned, I really don't give up. You know, when people are that way to me, I go, what do they hate about me so much? Or when they you know, the way I look, like when my hair was longer this summer, I started getting different reactions to when I had hair shorter. And in this day and age, I thought, what? You know, and in California, you know, so, but, you know, there are still people like that, and you can't always be. You can listen if someone gives you a criticism and check it out with yourself, but you can't always be reacting. When I was younger, I started to react too much to a criticism, or, oh, look at you, your body is this way, and women know about this a lot. But even as a guy, or oh, you're not buff, or oh, you don't play football, or oh, you know, whatever it was, you name it. You're wearing funny pants, they're not Levi's or whatever. And everybody needs to learn not to be stuck up and conceited and egotistical, but to listen to what people say, and are they saying something to you because they just want to make you feel bad and they're not happy, or is it a true criticism? So again, it's that search for the truth that the media should be doing. I mean, I personally wish we had Walter Cronkite back, because he didn't take BS, you know? He didn't tell people to do a story, he did it. and you could call and criticize, and he would respond. Nowadays, you take away the teleprompter, and some of them are not journalists. They don't know what to say.
Indeed. Well, Dina, we're running out of time, so we've got to wrap the show up.
Well, then I'll run out of here, too.
It's always
nice
a pleasure
talking to you tonight.
Yes.
Hi, Space Cadets. Nice seeing you again. Good night.
Good night, Dina. All right, Sirlana. Mm-hmm. So you
dropped the thing here.
Okay, are you ready to wrap the show up? Or
yeah, I guess I feel like we haven't really said much tonight.
No, I think I've said a lot tonight.
Yeah,
and,
I didn't say much, so.
I just think it's important that people understand, and I might say this often, and it might sound like a broken record, but it's important that our audience knows that where I'm coming from is a point of love and a point of hope, and I want people to come to our show and not feel threatened. I want people to come to our show and hear various points of view that they can agree to and maybe disagree to. But at the end, we're still all friends. On that note, Sirlana, is there any housekeeping or?
Geez. Well, is this the last Saturday of August? Yeah.
It is, yeah. So
when is? Oh, that's not till the end of next. Okay, that's not till the end of next month. Our 2-year anniversary
is coming up in September.
The end of September.
Yeah, that's the end of September. That'll be the September 30th is we'll celebrate our 2 years of SBU on the SBU network. It's been fun these past 2 years, and can't believe it's been 2 years since we've been doing this. I know you're looking over there, but it's a blank slate. So meaning that I'm either going to have to go into overdrive.
Right there?
That's that lady about the Canadian merger.
Okay. Quick question before you all run away, because y'all saying goodnight to each other. Would you like me to do a book report for you? I'll have to read a book super fast. I guess I can get started now while we're trapped at home. Found an interesting book written by an interesting woman. Can't get a hold of her, but I could still talk about this book. It's really interesting. She's positing an idea about how Canada and the United States should just merge to become one country. So let me know if you'd be interested in me reading that and then getting some talking points going on that.
You know what I hate about that is the Canadians won't be as tasty if they merge with the United States.
Okay.
And I guess I got to throw it in overdrive. I have a few guests I'm looking at that I really just need to buckle down and reach out to them.
Dennis, go track her down. Okay, Dennis. I got the name written down. She's actually following the universe on Twitter, so I don't know why. Unless it was auto.
Because we're an awesome show to listen to.
Yeah, but sometimes you put keywords in Twitter, and if you've got it set up, I think it will auto-follow certain people. So.
Well, anyway, that is the universe, and join us next week at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time when Sirlana and myself will explore the universe. So come explore the universe. That is Spaceboy Universe. Good night, everyone.
Spaceboy Universe is hosted by Spaceboy and Sirlana. Executive producer is Sirlana. Social media producer is Dennis Koch. Associate producer is Lee Ann Cordes. Music production is Spaceboy of SpaceboyMusic.com. Special thanks goes out to Lee Ann K, K28, Mark S, and Bob N. This has been a Spaceboy Universe production. Support the universe by exploring Spaceboy Universe with Spaceboy and Sirlana. Sweet dreams, Space Cadets.